I in here. Did he say bye?
He's.
Oh, okay. Here you go, close enough. You call this meeting to order. This is the June 6th meeting of the Planning Board. And we have a pretty full agenda, so we'll get right into it. The second order of business is to review and approve minutes. We have the minutes from January 4th, 2024, and April 13th, 2023. For those of you who are here in 2023, do you have any issues with it?
No, I would, I have, Perna was here. So it's me and Perna. I had no issues on these minutes.
Okay. Okay, so Bernie, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Barely.
Okay, so these are gonna be, well, who's gonna vote on this?
So Perna and I,
That's Bernie and you.
so I guess I'd make a motion. Huh?
We have to take them separately because.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd make a motion, as I guess as acting chair for the purposes of the April 6, 2023 minutes. I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes as written. Perna, do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Done.
Okay.
From here, I.
Thank you.
Okay, next order of business is,
We have to do the January 4th one?
January 4th.
next order of business is to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2024. Anybody have any comments on this? Okay, then I'll ask for a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, this is gonna require, a roll call vote. Mr. Iliadi,
Yes.
Mr. Rorakis,
Yes.
Ms. Holstrom.
Yes.
Okay,
Should've done that.
Mr. Perna, Rayo,
Yes.
I should have done that in the
And-
January minutes.
Mr. DiPaolo, yes. Okay. Next order of business is to review and sign bills. We have three bills. We have one from Bowman for peer review, traffic study for $1,120. A second one from Bowman for the same topic for $2,240. And we have one for Graves Engineering for site plan review for $1,939.62. And that's a total of $5,299.62. So are there any questions or comments on these invoices?
These invoices, these bills are all paid by the applicants through the fees that they submit to the town, so.
Right.
I would move that we authorize the expenditures as read by the chair.
Second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Iliadi,
Yes.
Mr. Rorakis,
Yes.
Ms. Holsky,
Yes.
Mr. Rayo,
Yes.
and Mr. DiPaolo, yes. Okay. Do any board members have comments on anything that's not on the agenda tonight? No?
No comments.
Okay. Staff report, Mr. McGoldrick, do you have anything?
Nothing this evening.
Okay. Okay, next order of business is a meeting, not a hearing. Verify parking and access arrangements on administrative site plan review for 6 and 10 Hardwick Turnpike.
I have a conflict, so I'm not accusing myself.
Okay. Mr. McGoldrick, do you want to just?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the applicant's available, but just to kind of tee it off, so this is administrative site plan review. So this is done primarily at the staff level. We do issue this to the board for comment in terms of that, in terms of if there's other considerations within the criteria that we should be considering or within the bylaw. The proposal here is for essentially a shared lot the 6 and 10 Hartford Turnpike. There's 2 uses existing on the site, and they're proposing to amend those uses. The parking across both lots does meet it, but not singularly. So the request is for verification of that access arrangement. So staff has reviewed it preliminarily. I believe engineering's recommendation to the applicant. I don't know if they've issued it or not yet formally, but their recommendation is going to be that the lot be A&R'd to become one singular lot, and we'll review it further from there, but this is primarily just to collect any board member comments in relation to the proposal.
Okay, anyone have any comments?
I don't have any comments.
I have a question. When you look at the site plan, on the lower left side, there's 4 or 5 parking spaces on the bottom side of the triangle. That property's in Worcester. How does that affect?
Correct. So that parking lot, that portion of the parking lot is in Worcester, but it does serve this lot, so this would still be conducive to this nature. My understanding of the intent is to stripe those and to use those primarily for employee parking. That proposed medical office use would be using the front parking for their people who are in attendance for going to that business.
So, refresh my memory on our bylaws, but if you're using the property of another landowner to meet a requirement, you have to do something for that, right? You have to have some kind of an agreement or something on the deed?
Right, and so that's primarily our recommendation. I think the cleanest approach, and that was the recommendation from the town engineer, is that A&Ring the lot to have it as one singular lot, and establishing that agreement as needed would probably be our recommendation of the cleanest path forward. Certainly, if there was another arrangement that the applicant wanted to consider, we would review that within the context of the bylaw, but.
Okay, because if they don't have anything secured, that they can use that in perpetuity or whatever, 50 years, that parking could just
Right.
poof,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, and so,
Excuse me, whoa,
and just to clarify, so this is existing parking, as it is serving those businesses, and the change, the proposal here is primarily a change in use to the proposed medical office, so.
yes, but the parking still is on a different piece of land,
Correct.
right? And when you said, engineering said to make it one parcel, you talking about both buildings? Make that one big site, including the triangle?
So it's 2 parcels. I think the fact that the town line splits it doesn't change in terms of the context of our zoning evaluation, but, so it would join those 2 parcels as one lot.
Both buildings?
Correct.
Okay, and then the third triangle, you're saying, the third piece, the triangle I'm talking about, that would get incorporated into the other thing?
So my understanding, it already is
It's the same owner, right now, I looked it up, but is that gonna stay that way? It's the same owner, are those 2
That's
buildings?
not a
the,
separate.
the,
No, it's a lot over here, yes.
the town line does not separate as a separate parcel, from my understanding.
Okay, you might wanna look at the Worcester map, because I'm showing that's a piece that is part of a bigger piece in Worcester. That's what I saw tonight, so, you didn't need to do it now, you just pass it along as a comment. Other than that, as long as they meet the parking requirements and everything else, I don't have a problem with it. Excuse me, did you wanna make a comment?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if we had an opportunity to do that. So we're talking about getting permission from other business owners. This has been held in joint ownership for decades, and we're proposing that it would continue to be held in joint ownership. I did print the parking bylaws here, which indicate that contiguous use is acceptable across a shared lot, so I'm not sure why we would have an artificial requirement to put them onto one when they have a contiguous lot that doesn't even require joint ownership, and yet we do have joint ownership currently, and we will have going
That you'll have to take up with engineering because they made the recommendation, but,
Want us here tonight, I guess, is my concern. So I don't want to have to come back on July 11th because we couldn't rectify something in this room when we have all the parties here. So
no, we're just passing the recommendation on. It's Ms. McGolrick and, the building inspectors, it's the building inspector's decision, it's not our decision.
thank you.
We just were asked if we had any comments or concerns. So, did you want to add anything? No?
That was it, just to clarify the joint ownership. The 638 Sunderland, I think it is
Right.
also under Frank's ownership, so that corner is in Worcester, but it's not part of a separate larger parcel. That does coincide with the number 6 property.
Okay. That's not what I saw on the map, but if you say it is, you're gonna have to deal with it. Okay, so anybody else, any comments? No. Okay, anything else that we should know before? Okay, Chris, so I have my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next order of business is a new public hearing on the proposed expansion of the Mountain View Cemetery. Site plan approval, location is 65 Prospect Street, and you need to read and add, Ms. Ostrom?
Yes. Okay, so the Shrewsbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday evening, June 6, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Select Board's hearing room at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, to hear the application of the Town of Shrewsbury, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury, Mass. 01545, for site plan approval by the Planning Board as required by the Town of Shrewsbury zoning bylaws, 7F3, for the redevelopment of Prospect Park and expansion of Mountain View Cemetery, as shown on plans entitled Mountain View Cemetery Expansion dated April 2nd, 2024, prepared by BSC Group of 803 Summer Street, Boston, Mass. 02127, stamped by Dominic Rinaldi, P.E., consisting of 44 pages. The subject project is located at 65 Prospect Street on the southern part of Prospect Park, between Prospect Street to the east and Route 14 Boylston Street to the west, and consists whole or in part of Shrewsbury's Assessor's Tax Plate 16, Plot 072000. A copy of the application plans and reports may be seen in the Office of the Planning and Economic Development Department at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury, Mass., and on the Planning Board website.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Ms. McGolrick, somebody's gonna make a presentation?
Yep.
Hi,
Hi,
would you like to introduce yourself? and-
yes, I will, and I will start my presentation if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Can everybody see that now? I can see it. Okay. Good evening. My name is Rachel Selch. I'm with the BSC Group. I'm a professional landscape architect in the state of Connecticut, working under a professional landscape architect in the state of Massachusetts, Ricardo Austrich, who has presented here before but could not be here tonight. I will be presenting on the behalf of the town of Shrewsbury, who is the applicant, and this is for site improvements associated with the establishment of a landscape cemetery at Prospect Hill Park. And the landscape cemetery will be an off-site extension of the existing traditional cemetery, Mountain View Cemetery, which is located across the street on the west side of Boylston Street. The new cemetery facilities will be located on the east side of Boylston Street. The project goal is to provide an additional cemetery space in order to meet the growing needs of the community, while broadening burial and memorialization options. Additionally, the project has been designed to maintain and highlight the historical, cultural, and ecological character of the site as well as the town. So as you can see from the presentation here, I'm gonna I've just introduced myself, and we're gonna go over the project overview quickly today with the project elements and permitting highlights, and then there'll be a moment for question and answers. And tonight we'll be respectfully requesting a site plan approval for this proposed landscape cemetery. We've also, I know this is a little bit out of order, I didn't realize, but maybe not out of order, but unusual. We've already gotten approval from the Concom today. So we actually have a letter of approval already in the application. And this slide is just to give you a little bit of, a kind of general idea of the area. And this, if you can see my mouse at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, that's the existing Mountain View Cemetery location. And in the middle here, that's the proposed landscape cemetery. So we see that as an extension of Mountain View Cemetery. This is the survey or GIS survey of the park, and as you can see here, the limits of the cemetery will be towards the southern end of the park, and we're intending this to mesh very well with the existing park use. This is the rendered site plan. And what I wanted to start off with is just giving you a little bit of overview of the entrances of the site plan. And the first one I'd like to talk about is the existing entrance off of Prospect Street. This is the existing park entrance. And what we will be doing as part of this project is making this a little bit wider, as well as improving sight lines. And this will help people as they're driving into the park and walking near the entrance. We are also going to be widening that driveway so that it allows for two-way traffic, and then a one-way loop at the parking lot with charging stations and handicap accessible parking.
Excuse me one second.
Yes.
Can you make the picture full screen so it shows up a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that on the sharing. Do you know how to do that, Emily?
Whoops, that's not how.
I can zoom in for sure. Is that better?
Yeah, it'd make
Yeah.
this easier for people to.
Okay, yeah.
Great,
And
thank
then
you.
this bottom entrance, I'll just call attention to so this is the, sorry. This is the this is the proposed cemetery entrance. This will be a two-way, 24-foot wide driveway entrance, and that serves the new cemetery office and parking area. There's also going to be a small pedestrian entrance, and that will serve this pedestrian walk. This walk also will serve, it can fit, like say a hearse or small vehicles, and that will be closed off by bollards, so removable bollards, so you'll be able to have a little bit of control over that. And then the last entrance on this plan is off of Ballston Street, and this will be the maintenance gate entrance. We do have all of the entrances will have gates. There's an existing gate at the Prospect Park entrance, and we just wanted to keep that kind of idea where you can close off the entrances if needed be. We will also be maintaining the maintenance gate that goes up towards the top of the hill. Okay. This is just a little bit further examples of what we're planning to do, and as you can see here, the left top image is the entrance from 1915, and that was the original. You can see it's not very many trees. I think it had been clear cut at some point before the mansion was built. And then on the right hand side, you can see 2023. So this is those gates are still existing. So what we're intending to do is replace those gates. Obviously, we can't widen them without demolishing them. So we'll be replacing those gates in the same silhouette and character. So those are the kind of the pictures that we could find online. Obviously, we have designed something a little bit different, but you can see that on our plans. All right, and then this is kind of just a little bit more about the site and how it works. I mentioned previously that this entrance will be, sorry, it looks like you just lost, there you go. I just mentioned that this entrance will be a two-way entrance. The rest of the driveway is also intended to be two-way. We have gone and used a little bit of precedence from other cemeteries where they have a smaller driveway. This is proposed at 16 feet wide with reinforced turf on both sides. So this will allow for cars to pass each other as well as park on the side if somebody's visiting somebody. And the buildings you see on the plan, the only one that we have on our current plans is the gazebo. The other two will be slabs. We are going to be, we have already proposed to include all the utilities necessary to those buildings. We don't have the buildings designed yet, and that'll be a later date. Okay. And our next slide. Okay, this is just an example photo. This is kind of what our inspiration was. This is Swan Point in Rhode Island. This is a cemetery in Rhode Island. This is what we have on the plans, which is similar character. And we did notice, we just wanted to call out that we will be meeting the zoning regulations with this. And then this will be also, there will be a chance for the contractor to do other options if, or equals. And so that then this is our next slide here. We really wanted to call out what our intentions are for the planting of this site. The major thing that we are doing, and we did do an tree inventory with Davy Tree. They went out and surveyed all the trees, and they also surveyed the health of the trees as well as the species. So what we've done through our process is really try to focus on removing any trees that are in poor health, already dead, or invasive. And so that's where we started in our tree removal process, and we really tried to keep as many of the good trees on site, and really build from there. So what I'm showing here is we are showing a few areas like the maintenance building where we are going to be adding a little bit of plants just for screening purposes. The cemetery office just to beef up how that looks. This entrance here, because we're losing a few trees, just their health is poor, so we're going to be replacing some of those and beefing up the entrance in here. And then the other two areas I want to talk about is this area. This is the constructed wetland area, and we'll be talking more about stormwater later. And this is a 50-foot planted buffer. I just want to assuage any people who might be here today. That 50-foot buffer will not be used for any burial areas. So that's a buffer it's a planted buffer for the abutters. Is densely planted to replace some of the trees that had to go because of their health or their invasive nature. Next slide. This is, again, just this planting plan in black and white so you can see it. I don't think anybody will have any questions, but if you do, I did include the species on here as well as a blow up of the constructed wetland plantings. You can see it's pretty intense. So I don't want to take up too much time on that today. But this is a slide showing kind of the feeling of what we did for the plantings. You can see on the top two images, that's the buffer planting precedent as well as the woodland edges precedent. So we'll be kind of emulating that feeling. And the constructed wetland area will feel somewhat like that with small pockets of open water. And that eventually does connect to the existing wetland. The planting precedents that you see there. So as part of the cemetery, we're clearing what you will need for the future, but you don't need to maintain all of that right now. So what we're proposing is doing spaces that are meadow, that might have mown trails, that people can use as part of the park. And this is our overall grading and stormwater features plan. I wanted to include this just to call out the fact that, as you can see on here, we are showing a lot of grading, but that's a little bit deceiving because as part of the cemetery, we're removing trees, we're prepping some burial areas, but we're essentially putting the dirt back after we've done all of that. So a lot of what you're seeing is not really going to be changing too much. And a lot of these blue areas what I've highlighted the swale areas as well as some drainage areas just to give you an idea of the direction of flow. We are going to be doing the surface flow across the site to bioinfiltration areas as well as the constructed wetland area. And then I just want to talk a little bit more about stone walls and burial features. So as you can see highlighted here, I've highlighted most of the existing stone walls on site, and what we're going to be doing is maintaining a lot of those existing walls and either reconstructing them so that they look a lot nicer and less like just stones in the woods, or we'll be removing those just in the areas where we're going to be doing the new driveway. We may also make those a little bit longer using some of the existing stones that we'll be unearthing in the site prep process. As far as those stone walls go, we want to include some precedents from other cemeteries. So what I have here is Mount Auburn Cemetery as well as Swan Point, where you can see an option for people who may have cremation, where you can get actually stones engraved with your name on it, and then you're in the ground next to the stone wall. And we'll have other options. Obviously, we will have the traditional full body burial plots, but I wanted to show, I think everybody kind of understands what that looks like. I wanted to show some of the other options that we are going to be providing. So there will be a scattering garden area as well as other more traditional cremation areas. There may be communal monuments where people can engrave their names, and then they'll be in the scattering garden or whatnot. And that is essentially, again, we're respectfully requesting that this be approved tonight, but obviously we're here for questions and answers, and we're hoping to assuage any fears tonight. And if there's anything I can clarify for you, what are we here for?
Anybody on the board have any questions, comments? No?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Close.
Is this, are there any historic considerations? I know that, Prospect Park is a older park area. I didn't know if there was any historic considerations, especially as it relates to some of the existing stonework that's in the area now. And was that taken into consideration as part of this?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, a lot of those stone walls will remain, and we'll be kind of like highlighting them as features. So that we hope to be really nice there. As far as that, there's not too many historic features that I know of that we needed to that we captured in the survey or anything that we needed to maintain, but I'd be happy to hear of any if anybody has anything, but
I have a couple questions. Are you gonna take the site down in phases, or are you gonna do it all at once?
so this is intended for all at once construction, and that's why we recommended doing the meadow areas so that there's reduced maintenance of areas where you're not going to be building out for many years.
Because if you, my fear is if you take the site down all at once,
Yeah.
just the way it's graded, you could have a mess on 140.
I understand the concern. We've talked through this with Keith and Andy, and we originally talked with the town about phasing this out, and their thoughts is let's get this done all at once.
Okay, because once it's stabilized, yes, it will work.
Yeah.
My fear is you just go in there, you go in there during a wet season, you're gonna have a mess on
Yeah.
Wilson Street.
I think that I think that there's some availability to work with the contractor, on when that gets done. There is, of course, the erosion and sedimentation control plan, and we're willing to look at any other options if you feel that there needs to be beefed up or something like that in an area.
I think you should be taking a look at.
Agreed. Anyone else? Couple of questions.
Okay.
Refresh my memory. Is there a wall between the houses on Merriam and Prospect?
I don't believe there is, but I can look for you. I don't see one. I see one in some spaces. Like it looks like there's maybe one at the southern end here, but I don't think it goes
Okay.
all the way across.
Okay. So the screening that's gonna be there
Yep.
is gonna consist mostly of new plantings, right?
I'm sorry.
It's gonna consist mostly of new plantings?
That's correct because most of those trees, I believe, even might have already come out. So they do need to be replanted.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a couple of years, that'd be really good, but,
Yeah.
I don't know if the neighbors would want it or not, but was there any consideration of putting a fence along that?
We did not consider that. Besides the fact that we wanted to maintain that just more natural edge and let the neighbors decide if they want a fence or not. But yeah, we
Okay.
could entertain that if we could talk about that with
Did-
town.
Did the town get feedback from the neighbors on what they'd like to see?
I'm not sure if, I know that Keith has had some contact with the neighbors. I'm not sure what they've said.
Okay. I think I know the answer to the question, but I'm gonna ask you anyways.
Okay.
I can't see it. The driveway, not the maintenance driveway, the other one that's going on, out on 140.
Okay.
Is the reason that that isn't lining up with the other driveway because of wetlands? Why is it gonna be across from the other one instead of having a staggered intersection?
Oh, yeah, the culvert is right there. There's an existing culvert right there.
Is that driveway gonna be open regularly?
No, that's gonna have a closed maintenance gate 100% of the time
Okay, so what's the purpose of the driveway then?
for maintenance.
No, not the maintenance driveway.
Oh.
The other one.
I-
Isn't there a
sorry.
second driveway on there?
There's a driveway, I'm sorry, can you see my screen? There's the maintenance driveway,
Yeah.
there's the cemetery entrance, and there's the existing park
Oh,
entrance.
okay.
Just went to the north.
I saw it. I saw
Right
it.
here.
Okay.
Okay,
In my app, I was looking at it wrong.
no problem, thank you.
Okay, and then, for some reason, I thought I saw 3 entrances, but I guess not.
There's 3 entrances, but this is an existing entrance, and,
Right, oh, okay, I was, right.
yeah, yeah.
I got it. So is the main entrance gonna normally be open?
The main entrance to the cemetery,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, because you said it was gonna be gated.
There's gonna be a gate available for
Okay.
the town to close if
Okay,
needed.
I didn't know if it was gonna get closed at night or whatever.
If
um,
that's what the town wants, they may.
16 feet wide on the driveways, is that what they usually use in a cemetery?
That's pretty typical for for cemeteries, smaller driveways. Because you don't want a big roadway going through a cemetery.
No, but then you run into a situation where people are always parking a little bit on the grass and it always doesn't look good.
Right, and that's why we have included DCR approved reinforced turf on reinforced lawn on either side.
What's that mean?
So it's essentially just it's not gonna be running out like a typical lawn would.
Okay,
Yeah.
really coarse and rough and like what we would call weeds?
No, it should be lawn. I mean, it's just got a different detail.
Okay. One more question.
The residents don't generate a lot of traffic.
Yeah. But, yeah, 'cause at night they ghost and they just float around. I had another question, it'll come to me. Anybody else have questions? Perna,
Yes.
do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I was wondering if you have addressed our Graves engineering comments from May 23rd at all. I may have missed it, but just checking to make sure that those comments were addressed.
Yes, I did actually see those comments. I forgot to mention
Oh,
I forgot to mention my response there. I actually do have 2 things to mention from the engineer on record. The first is just to note that there's not going to be any increase of peak flows, and that we are meeting all stormwater standards. And the second is that we did receive the peer review comments from Graves. And the engineer of record says that there's nothing really of concern there, and we will address on our final documents.
Okay, so if you are going to be kind of submitting some of those revised sheets and things like that with the proper professional engineer stamp, so the plans that you submitted as of now I believe don't meet the requirements, and we may have to wait till we receive all the revisions and your comments in response to Graves Engineering.
Yeah.
Is that fair characterization from my part?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all of it. Does anybody catch all of it? They could repeat it.
The audio's pretty low.
what?
The audio's pretty low. I missed some of it as well.
Could you put on the closed caption for us, because we can't hear any of it.
Okay.
We can't hear him either.
No, but how about,
Oh.
what's this?
Okay,
closed
I'll try to repeat. So the plan, some of the comments from Graves were relating to the professional engineer stamp on the plans.
Yes.
So, and likewise, there are other comments that you need to address. I think we need to wait till we receive those revised plans and comments from you.
Okay.
You want to paraphrase what he said, if you can?
I think he said that he thinks that we need to wait until we see the revised plans and comments from us per Graves' comments.
Okay.
That's kind of what we do. We kind of wait. for, just because
Okay.
it's the town, and any other applicant, we wouldn't just take you at your word.
Okay.
So I think it's, you gotta satisfy Graves, the comment letters.
Okay. Anything else, Myrna?
No, I'm all set with that.
Okay. Chris, you have anything?
Nope, nothing.
No? Nobody else on? Okay, this is a public hearing, so if anybody wants to ask questions or make comments, you're welcome to. Please wait till you're recognized by the chair, and if you could go over to the little podium, it's easier for people to hear if you're over there. So, who would like to speak? And when you do speak, yes, sir. If you could give us your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Chris Harris, and I live on Boylston Circle. And to elaborate a little bit on what Maurice was talking about, the entrance to the, I guess it's going to be the maintenance entrance on Route 140. There's very little distance between Merriam Ave and the bottom of the cemetery, which is also Boylston Circle. And there's going to be an entrance there. My concern is how many vehicles will be pulling into that, and what type of vehicles will be pulling into that entrance, and at what times. If anyone who's lived on Gulf Street or Boylston Circle have had come down 140, you really have to hug the double yellow line in order to let cars and 18-wheels and other vehicles passing you. There have been multiple accidents there over the past several years. So I'm just looking at the map that you had there. So if you're coming down, say, between Merriam Ave and Boylston Circle, and there's an entrance on the right, say an 18-wheel is right behind that person taking a right turn, they're gonna have to pull over to the left. And if there's a person taking a left on a Boylston Circle, they're gonna have to pull over to the right very, very quickly. There's not much distance between there.
Onto Bowles and Strokes.
Onto Boylston Circle.
That's more than 150 feet, which is required for driveway distances.
Maybe if people are obeying the speed limits. Now, I can attest.
Well, I'm not sure what we
I
can
can
do
just
about
attest
that.
the speed limits. I'm a crossing guard at St. Mary's, and every day, 20 miles an hour is a crawl, but minimum speed that you're going is 35, 40, 45, 50 plus miles an hour. That's in a school zone. So coming down Route 140, people are not gonna really obey the speed limit. They're gonna accelerate. An 18-wheel is gonna, when I take my left onto Boylston Circle, I sigh a breath of heaven that I made it safely onto my road.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, if there's a vehicle taking a right onto the municipal entrance or the maintenance entrance, and there's traffic, large vehicles coming down the hill, they're gonna have to pull over to the left to pass the person taking a right, and then if there's anyone taking a left on a Boylston Circle, it's gonna be a quick move. But it's a traffic concern, is what I'm just really trying to make a point of.
Is that section of highway a state highway? Are you gonna need a master
I
curb
don't
cut?
believe it is.
It's state numbered, but it's town-owned.
Yeah,
Is it? Okay.
because we actually had that question.
Right. Mr. McGurk, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, not that entrance wouldn't be used, but that's the maintenance entrance, and so that would only be used by municipal vehicles. Obviously, maintenance would still be able to enter through the normal access for regular maintenance if needed. I believe that maintenance section would likely be used more for special circumstances, and that primarily would be left closed, directing traffic to use the Prospect Street entrances unless needed for specific circumstances, and we would take traffic into account through
Well,
that
let
operation.
me just follow up on what the gentleman said.
So would that be used for funerals as well? For funeral processions, that
No,
entrance?
no, not
Okay.
for funerals, just the funerals would enter through the cemetery entrance.
Okay.
Okay. What about during construction? Do we have-
I think that we said construction entrance should be, off Prospect Street, but I can't recall if that was the answer.
do we- some-
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is I would still want to retain the flexibility during the construction phase to utilize that. I think we'll take that traffic consideration into advisement, certainly when planning operations for that construction. We'll work with the subs to make sure that that's taken into consideration, primarily using the Prospect Street entrance. But again, I would want to retain that flexibility to use it if it's found to be, for specific circumstances,
Okay.
beneficial.
What I was going to in the question is that a 16-foot road too?
Yes, because it's only intended for one car at a time.
Okay. If we're gonna use that for construction vehicles, that, they might have to do something over there.
16 feet wide is large for a
Yes.
construction vehicle, yes.
But when a 16-wheeler is making a turn, you're not gonna do it like a car.
Right.
So I just think, Chris, we should make a note and be aware of it. It might have to be wider, or there might have to be some kind of a deceleration lane or something, a temporary one.
We can double check the turning radiuses of that too.
So, let me ask you a question. Because maybe it's worried about something that's not gonna happen. You said most of the dirt, soil, whatever's there is gonna stay on site?
Yep.
Is there gonna be a lot of soil coming in?
Not according to the grading plan. We are trying to maintain grades.
Looks like a balanced site.
What?
It looks like a balanced site.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, next.
Will there be closed captioning at this meeting?
Excuse me?
Will there be closed captioning at this meeting? 2 months ago, I requested to have closed captioning, and I sent you all a letter that you're violating the American Disabilities Act. How am I supposed to pay attention to this meeting if I can't hear?
You have a
I
question?
understand. What,
You have another question?
no,
So the town manager's office has been coordinating with the CART, which is the captioning services. They've been doing that on request. I can follow up with them in the morning, but we don't have a CART available tonight.
okay.
We have in the previous meeting, so.
You did have it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Try to get better at that. Okay. Anyone else, please?
Into the microphones, it will help.
Okay, we hear you.
Usually people tell me I'm too loud. Well, maybe not in this meeting. Sir, did you have a comment you want to make?
Anthony Bonham, 86 Prospect Street. So you mentioned, well, first question is, have you been on the site, and are the trees with the pink dots, are they the goners?
I think that's a different, the short answer is no, that's not. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You also mentioned that this space right here, I believe, the space is bordering on Prospect, that's 50 feet of greenery?
On the southern end there.
Is it on, so what
Nope.
I'm most concerned
Nope,
about is
southern end.
Prospect Street
Yep.
here, cemetery here.
Mhm.
There's trees blocking the cemetery, so you're not staring at a cemetery from your house.
Right.
Is that the fact? that there will
Actually,
be
yeah,
50
you
feet?
you can see from this plan, and I'll try to speak louder, sorry. You can see from this plan that a majority of the existing trees along Prospect Street will actually be maintained.
Okay.
That's a pretty good buffer. I wouldn't say it's necessarily all 50 feet across the board, but it's pretty close.
Well, I'm not considering 50
Yeah.
feet long.
Oh, wide,
road.
yeah.
Yeah, I want
Yeah.
wide.
Oh, yeah.
You're saying wide, like, so in other words, 50 feet from the road before the first tombstone in the cemetery.
So the 50-foot buffer I was talking about is across the southern end there.
So how deep do you think this green space is?
At the most, it might be 50-something feet. The least might be 30 feet.
Okay.
Can't tell right now.
And if a tree was bad in that area, you're saying that you're gonna plant a new one?
So in that area, according to our inventory, those trees are all good
They're all good?
that we're keeping, yes.
Okay. And what would be like an abutter's, like, recourse if the plan went, if the tree cutters got ambitious and like, oh, it's 10 feet, it's fine? You know, what's our recourse? Do we have any recourse?
I would talk to the town.
Yeah. Okay. Is this to scale? Like, is everything like?
It's to scale, but I don't think the scale is actually, the scale bar is right on here, unfortunately, because I just looked at that.
Okay. And what is this parking lot supposed to be, what's the purpose for it? Is that for like burials? Is that where like all the evidence is gonna come into, or is that like the park cemetery?
That's meant to be for the Friends at Prospect Park. So
Okay.
it's supposed to be a separate parking area.
So not necessarily cemetery
Not
parking?
necessarily cemetery parking, but although I could see some people parking there.
Okay.
Generally, people we expect to be parking along the side of the driveway.
Like down in this space?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks for your time.
Okay. Mr. McGory, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to mention that in terms of the landscaping and the trees to be retained, these were all inventoried. The town will be managing with the sub those clearing activities, and our department specifically does take a lot of scrutiny to the landscaping, not just on this project, but on all projects, to make sure that the planting plan that is provided and proposed is followed through with. We do go out on our final inspections to evaluate the trees, and if we see ones that are missing, if it's underplanted, or if trees are removed that were not meant to be, we do require them to be reestablished, so.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Mr. Kirk?
Chris Kirk, 40 Westwood Road. I just want to make it sure I'm clear on what's going to be done.
Okay.
This is an existing entrance,
Correct. We were improving that.
and is this an existing entrance?
That's going to be a new entrance. There's an existing pedestrian entrance there. Yes.
Okay. So is your plan to replace the gates at the existing entrance, or to build a new entrance, a gate at the new entrance, or?
Yeah, yes. We are intending to replace the gates at the existing entrance, as well as build new gates in the same style as those existing gates for the cemetery, so that it's the same as you're driving down the street.
Okay. And about, also, when the north end of the Mountain View Cemetery was constructed years ago, they cleared the land by excavating all the boulders. Is that the plan to do for this?
As I mentioned previously, there is some area, this is a large area to clear that much of right now. The way that the town and I have discussed is that we're going to clear a certain amount of the area, so pre-excavate, if you will, those areas, but not the whole site.
You're going to be excavating like driveways and whole body interment areas?
Pre-excavating interment areas, yes.
Okay, and the rocks go where?
We would use the rocks on site.
Really?
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, I remember when
That's the intention.
I remember when they excavated the north end of Mountain View Cemetery. There were just mountains of rocks they took
Well,
out.
that's the intention. I mean, we have a lot
Okay.
of space to be able to use
Okay.
them.
And also regarding drainage, the constructed wetlands, you're going to construct depressions with swales and,
Yes.
okay.
and it'll eventually connect to the existing wetlands.
Okay. And one last thing is that, is there going to be any security for the little gazebo you're going to be installing?
Security, right now, there's no like cameras or anything proposed. That might be something the town may consider in the future.
I would strongly recommend it. Otherwise, you're going to get it covered with paint and littered with beer cans. Okay.
I understand, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions, comments? No? Okay,
I don't think we can close it.
no, we gotta continue it.
No.
Um,
And if-
Okay.
If you had a phasing plan, it would be helpful to see it too.
Again, it's not, the intention is not to phase it, it's to build it all at once, that's.
Well, you
what-
just said you were gonna phase it.
You said you were gonna do sections at a time.
Yeah.
Oh, pre-excavation. So,
Meaning
so.
re-internment?
Preparing to start interring, yes.
Oh, I get
Yeah.
that. You're not gonna, you don't
But
have,
we're not gonna do the whole site. Do you understand? Like, so we're gonna be digging down to a certain depth, but not across the entire site. That's the intention right now.
okay.
And that's what we've discussed with Keith and Andy.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if I may, just to clarify,
Go
the site work for developing the paths and developing the infrastructure will be done all in one phase. The interments would then be done as a phased
Post.
interment, opening up each portion of the
Yes.
cemetery.
Yeah, we wouldn't have like open graves. I'm sorry if that was not clear.
No.
Okay, so when, the roadways are gonna be put in, driveways, whatever you wanna call them, right?
Correct. Yep.
And then we're gonna prepare sections at a time, is that what you're saying?
So what I mean by pre-excavation is basically removing any large boulders that would inhibit grave, digging and
Right.
whatnot. So it's not, and then we'll be filling it back in and covering it with lawn. So it's not going to be like open sections or
And
anything.
you're gonna start at one end and just keep going to the other, is that what you said? You're not
That,
clear cutting it, first of all.
we're
right?
not clear cutting it.
Right.
Nope.
So just so everybody's clear, because I think we're a little confused, we got the road parts are going in first.
Right.
And then you've got all these sections that are for burials.
Yep.
You're gonna prep those. It's gonna be one project. They're gonna go from one section to the other until you finish.
That's correct.
You're not gonna go through the whole project like you'd do if you were building a school and wait, place out all at once. You're gonna do a section at a time, an
Maybe.
area at a time as you're working.
Misunderstand. So that's not up for us to really say. The contractor has means and methods. I would expect them to clear trees, and they may do the areas where we're prescribing pre-excavation
Yeah.
at the same time. And then I would expect all of the excavation work to be happening at the same time across the site. And then they might do it in phases depending on how they want to do it. And by phases I mean sections. Like,
Right.
yeah.
But to Mr. Rotalakis's point at the beginning of the hearing, so there's gonna be very large areas that are gonna have to be loomed and seeded.
Yes.
Right, so, and as they, depends on how fast they go, it is gonna be, all of that is gonna be prepped at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So,
I
yeah,
believe
right?
we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, no, we are.
Okay.
Just, we're using different words.
Okay.
Okay, all right, got it. Anyone else, anybody else have any questions now that we confused everybody? Yes, ma'am.
And to clarify, part of the pre-excavation is actually part of our tree saving method. So we're actually calling out protection of the trees at the same time, yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel Missel, 23 Cypress. Quick question about the plantings around the constructed wetlands. Will those be native species?
Yes.
Okay. And just generally, I do find it a little concerning that there are so many questions that need to be answered by another entity. So I would ask that the next time this is brought up in this meeting, that there be maybe people from the construction company to answer the questions, the specific questions that you guys have. It seems to me that it's really unclear. Maybe you guys are clear, but I don't know about everybody in the audience. It seems really unclear to us. So if it could be either delineated or bring the construction people, telling us that construction people have means and methods, that leaves us a little concerned. So I'll leave you guys to answer that.
We don't have a contractor yet, right?
Correct.
We haven't bid it.
Right.
But next meeting, we can have town engineer, and whoever appear to answer questions.
Yeah.
We can do a little bit of talking to the contractor when the contract is chosen about trying to do it a certain way, but there's only so far you can do that with the bidding laws, right?
Yeah, we don't have a,
We will have a pre-construction meeting with the contractor who is chosen, and we should have a pre-construction meeting prior to the bid as well.
Right.
we're gonna require that
Yeah.
decision,
Right,
yes.
okay.
So there will be, when I say, and this is for everybody else, when I say we're leaving the means and methods up to the contractor, that's actually something we have to do. We do prescribe a lot of things in the construction documents that the contractor has to do. And means and methods is really how they want to do it and their schedule they want to work on. But is there any clarification you'd?
Yeah,
We go-
I just wanted to clarify the pre-construction phasing and how that works, so, and that condition, just for clarity. So in this case, with the specific contractor, so we would go through the bid process to hire out a contractor to do the work. The pre-construction meeting is conducted at a staff level, not in a public setting. So that would be a staff level that we would meet with the contractor. We go over the decision, any conditions that are placed on it, and any other kind of information that's pertinent to the kind of project moving forward. That's done before any site work. We do that on all of our projects, and that gets all of our land use boards and the subcontractor and the applicant, which is the town in this case, all on the same page, and allows, make sure that everyone's on the same page before we actually start that site work. So that will take place, but I just, want to clarify that would be after the bidding process, and it would not be in a public setting.
Well, maybe Mr. Truman can show up at the July 10th hearing.
Yeah, given the conversation this evening, and I imagine we're likely going to continue the hearing,
Yes.
I'll either have Andy or another representative in place, or make sure that I understand some of those details in more intimate
Yeah.
way.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'll be brief. One quick question
All right.
about wildlife.
Yep.
If you had that first image that we first put up here. It's easily done. Very first one. Okay, my house is right here,
Okay.
and often I have deer coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen deer in the back of my yard, my neighbor's yard, but there's also plenty of fox, coyotes, raccoons, lots of rabbits this year, as everyone knows in the garden. So, but where are all these animals gonna go? What is their refuse?
Yeah,
Refuge, rather.
A very interesting and important question. This is not unique to other construction sites. So usually we see those animals, either they'll cross the construction site before construction begins in the morning, or they'll go around it. It's not like we're taking up the whole space. We're not even doing a lot of construction close to the wetland areas, so they'll be able to find their way to water and whatnot.
I'm just wondering if you're displacing a lot of those as well.
Maybe a little bit for the time, for the construction season.
All right,
Mr. Chair.
okay, thank you.
So how many acres are you gonna be working on? Do you mind?
The total disturbed area, I believe, is somewhere around 19 acres, but I think the application states more specifically.
Okay, 19 out of 70, right? You're not gonna,
Yeah.
you're not gonna touch like 50 acres,
Right.
right? There's not gonna be anything done.
Yeah.
So at least they have that existing. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, one more time, then we're gonna continue it till July 11th.
I move that we continue the public hearing on the Mountain View Cemetery expansion until Thursday, July 11th at 7 PM.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? No? Yes, the Kessler. Oh, you don't vote on this one? Mr. Ilya? Mr. Rodelakis?
In favor.
Ms. Holstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Brayo?
Yes.
And Mr. DiPaolo, yes. Okay. So, thank you. Thank you. If anybody thinks of any questions about this in the next month, you can send them into the planning department or call the planning department. Okay. Next order, well, I'm gonna give you a chance to
Thank you.
get organized, okay?
Well, do you want me to read this while? I have a-
The subdivision one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can read it. While she's getting ready.
Is that right? Okay. All right. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81S, as amended, the Shrewsbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday evening, June 6th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Select Board's hearing room at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury, to review a proposed preliminary subdivision as shown on plans entitled Proposed Preliminary Subdivision Plan dated April 25th, 2024, prepared by High Point Engineering, 980 Washington Street, Suite 216, Dedham, Mass. 026, stamped by Douglas J. Hartnett, P.E., in 4 sheets, located on the northwesterly side of Holden Street and westerly side of Clinton Street, and proposing the creation of a subdivision roadway in 4 lots on land presently shown on the Shrewsbury Assessor's map as 1 lot identified as Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 07, Plot 0020000. The owner is 160 Holden Street LLC, care of GFI Partners, 133 Pearl Street, Suite 300, Boston, Mass. 02110. The property is further identified as Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 07, Plot 0020000. A copy of the application, plans, and reports may be seen in the Office of the Planning and Economic Development Department at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury, Mass.
You have to read it for both properties, right?
They're
Both addresses?
2
Are we
separate.
conjoining the applications for purposes of this evening, or?
Well, they're gonna ask
And
to,
we provide a continuance of both, so.
you're gonna ask to continue, so why don't we
I wanted to make sure that the applicant.
right?
Okay, and the second legal notice pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81S, as amended, the Shrewsbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday evening, June 6th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Select Board's hearing room at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Avenue, Shrewsbury, to review a proposed preliminary subdivision as shown on plans entitled Proposed Preliminary Subdivision Plan dated April 25th, 2024, prepared by High Point Engineering, 980 Washington Street, Suite 216, Dedham, Mass. 02026, stamped by Douglas J. Hartnett, P.E., in 20 sheets, located north of Holden Street and easterly side of Clinton Street, and proposing the creation of a subdivision roadway in 4 lots on land presently shown on the Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 07, Plot 000. The owner is 160 Holden Street LLC, care of GFI Partners, 133 Pearl Street, Suite 300, Boston, Mass. 02110. The property is further identified as Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 07, Plot 041000. A copy of the application, plans, and reports may be seen in the office of the Planning and Economic Development Department at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury.
Okay, thank you. Do we have to open it and then continue it? Right, okay. So, open the hearing. And the applicant has requested a continuance, so we'll continue to, have a motion to continue to July 11th at 7 p.m. on these two subdivision applications.
I'll make that motion to continue both of these hearings to July, you said July 7th?
No, I said 11th.
Excuse
Did I
me,
get that
July
right there?
11th.
Yeah.
2024 at 7 PM.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, whoops, any discussion? There being none?
I just wanted to
Yes.
clarify that also, that request also extends the decision deadline as well.
Okay, thank you. Matt doesn't vote on this one either, right? It's not a special permit?
Correct.
It's
No, he
not a
doesn't.
special permit?
Right.
Okay, Mr. Liadi? To continue to July 11th.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Holstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Real?
Yes.
And Mr. DiPaolo, yes, and we have one abstention with Mr. Rotalakis. Okay, now, we're on to continuing the hearing for the warehouse facility proposal, site plan approval and special permit, 160 Holden Street LLC, location 142 Clinton Street. Okay, so, I think, just give me 1 second. I think, well, no, the way we're gonna handle this evening is, we're gonna let the proponent and their representatives, make a presentation, and try to address, some of the issues that have been raised over the past few meetings. And, then, the board will ask questions, and then staff have a question to comment, and then it'll be open to the public for questions and comments, okay? So, good evening.
Do you prefer we use the podium?
No, you got a mic there, so.
Okay, just ask. For the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mark Donahue from the law firm of Fletcher Tilton on behalf of 160 Holden Street. The application for site plan approval and special permit with me is Haley Palazzola from GFI Partners, who is the project head for this project. We have accomplished a fair amount since we were before you last. We have, you may recall at the end of the last meeting, we asked specifically if any board members had areas of concern or areas that they didn't think we had fully addressed to let us know so we can come back with that. We asked the same of staff. We did not get any specific inquiries, but we're obviously glad to answer any questions as they may arise coming along. We did submit a set of revised plans that were responsive to comments received from Graves Engineering, and also, as we had talked about at the last meeting, reflected a reduction in the size of the building that we'll review with you this evening. Those were dated May 29th. Graves Engineering has had a chance to review those plans and has issued what I would refer to as a clean review letter of June 6th, not indicating any further need for any further evaluation or analysis by the applicant. I note that they do suggest some conditions of approval, such as some test pits prior to installation, which obviously we can work through with you. Since we met, or when we last met, I think, a particular butter, Mr. Andrew Barnes of 115 Clinton Street, requested that there be further acoustical study of the impacts of the development upon his particular home. We asked Tech Environmental, Mark Wallace, who you saw at your April meeting, to do that test. He submitted a report dated May 14th, 2024, which is in the report. And that report indicates that that even though 115 Clinton Street is further away from the development project, it is at a higher elevation. The test was done. The modeling results indicate that the warehouse development will result in sound level impacts that range from 40 dBA to 41 dBA at 115 Clinton Street, which is consistent with the calculations that Mr. Wallace reviewed with you in April, and which were reviewed by your peer consultants. And then finally, there has been somewhat of a flurry of communication activity on the traffic there. We'll touch on that briefly, and then I'm going to ask permission for Jeffrey Dirk of Vanasse Associates to kind of bring it up to a pace. Some questions have come up since his March appearance here, and so we will also try to answer those. So that's what we've accomplished since last. What we also did was review all of the team's collective notes for what is better than 11 hours of testimony that this board has received on this particular project, in an effort to see what open issues or matters we haven't touched that have been raised in some fashion by the public. And as we did that, it became clear that there are really certain areas of concern in general that are repeated time and time again through that process. So just to review those, particularly first with regard to the aquifer, there has been a fair amount of discussion that the industrial use will endanger the town water supply. And I ask you to remember that the trigger that brings us to this special permit is simply in creating impervious area. Your bylaw specifically prohibits in the aquifer protection zone any use involving manufacture, operation, storage, or use of hazardous materials, including hazardous waste, any underground storage tanks, or any on-site disposal or process of non-sanitary wastewater. So all we have is the creation of impervious area as far as what's being proposed at the present time for the site. The second issue that has been discussed at some length is the risk presented by diesel trucks coming to the site and being on the site, and the potential for an accidental spill in some fashion. We reviewed with you in detail, most recently at the May meeting, when Mr. Doug Hartnett of High Point Engineering reviewed in detail the operation and maintenance plan. That includes a spill prevention control and countermeasure plan that we reviewed with you that's specifically part of that plan. We reviewed with you that during the course of the process, and as reflected in those May 29th plans, we have added emergency shutoff valves to the stormwater system, therefore acting as basically a capture or retention if there is any kind of fluid of that nature of a significant level, so that it can be treated in a consolidated area. And all of the detailed maintenance of that stormwater system that's set forth in the operation and maintenance plan, we have indicated is going to be documented and required in the property lease documents, and we have indicated a willingness to provide to the town periodic reports as far as that work's done. The third area that's been expressed as a concern on the aquifer by the public has been increased runoff due to impervious surface increase. In fact, just the opposite is true, and that's been confirmed by Graves Engineering. Graves Engineering has confirmed there's a 28% reduction in surface water discharge in the 2-year storm and a 20-year reduction in the 100-year storm event. They find that there are significant improvements to the water recharge, 2.4 times the required under the stormwater standards. And we also reviewed with you again at the May meeting, as we had in January originally, the improvement to the phosphorus load area going to Newton Pond, in which the loading ends up being 72% lower than the recommended maximum load by state standards. So through that process, we think we have responded to the inquiry that's appropriate for the planning board, which is the standard for review for a special permit under the aquifer protection. We are creating only impervious area that actually improves the site over its current condition, particularly in this site, which is a denuded site of an uncontrolled flow at the present time. That the use of the creation of the building and the parking areas, the impervious area, will not have an adverse impact on the aquifer, and there will not be any adverse impact to the public water supply. We then turned our attention to our collective notes with regard to site plan approval. There has been a consistent theme with regard to the site, that the building or the use is simply too big. And there's no doubt it is 2 large buildings, but it is a uniquely large site at over 100 acres in space. We are reducing the buildings, as shown in the latest plans, by 31,225 square feet. That's at the request of the Conservation Commission to meet your local wetland bylaw for setbacks. And we're glad to do that and have achieved that. And I noted on this slide that you have before you, we juxtapose our conditions against what the zoning bylaw allows in an industrial zone. And I think it's important to note that you require 20% open space for an industrial developed site. We are providing 60%. You permit coverage of 50%. We are only covering 20%, and we are far exceeding the setbacks from our neighboring properties in every single fashion. The plans that reduced plans are on the slide, obviously a little difficult to see there. As I indicated, Graves has them, obviously, Mr. McGoldrick has them, and you have them in your package. The most significant is, as I indicated, the pullback from the wetland areas of both the paving and the buildings themselves. During the course of the site plan approval process, we have heard that the use is going to be too loud. It's going to cause too much interference to the neighborhood. It's important to note that the site plan, when it was originally submitted in December, included sound barriers that complemented the site's topography to reduce the impact on surrounding receptors in any fashion. And as indicated, pardon me, Tech Environmental conducted a detailed study over a 1-week period of time to determine ambient conditions. I think it's important to remember that in that measurement and their study, they used the lowest ambient condition during that period of time to start as the baseline for any violation or challenge to the DEP standard. The absolute lowest time for an entire week period. It is the most conservative approach possible, and even utilizing that, all of the modeling indicates that the increase falls well within the DEP guidelines. That work has been reviewed by your peer consultants. They requested additional study and analysis. That was provided. And during his testimony at your April meeting, the peer review consultant indicated that he did not have any open issues or challenge the findings of Mr. Wallace that have been submitted to you. There is therefore, I would suggest to you, no basis for a determination that a project that meets DEP sound requirements would constitute a nuisance as defined in your zoning bylaw or by common law. The third point that's been discussed at some length is that there's simply too much traffic driven to the site. I ask you first to recall the applicable standard for site plan approval that gives this board the jurisdiction to look at traffic. Your bylaw says you're to look at internal circulation, queuing, and egress, so the vehicular and pedestrian safety is protected within the site. And second, that the use itself would not create a nuisance, once again, that high level of legal nuisance that would be detrimental to the public good. The peer review conducted a study of Mr. Dirk's work carefully and agreed on the methodology that was used. They asked for additional work that was done by the applicant, including new traffic counts. And the peer review consultants report to you, quoted in generally in agreement with the analysis and findings presented. That analysis presented proposes six different mitigation steps that are going to be implemented off-site to improve traffic in some fashion. And Mr. Dirk will review those with you briefly this evening. Those have been added to as most recently as the last couple of weeks, once again at the request of your peer review consultant with regard to a parking analysis. It's been discussed that the industrial use is going to cause air pollution. We see that as a regional issue. The only cause in this case is registered motor vehicles of diesel nature. We reviewed with you how the standards which are being implemented by the EPA beginning with model years 2027 are anticipated to result in a significant reduction in diesel emissions. We committed and would expect as a condition of approval strict compliance with the Massachusetts anti-idling law in any fashion. And in reviewing the 12 points that give your board under Section 7F jurisdiction on the site plan, it's really amiss as to any idea that general air pollution would fall within this board's jurisdiction with regard to a permitted use for site plan approval. So from our viewpoint, the bylaw is clear. Your ability on a site plan approval application is to either disapprove the plan, but only if you find that the applicant failed to provide adequate information required by the bylaw, or to approve the plan, subject to such conditions as you believe are necessary. We have submitted all of the information required by the bylaw, requested by this board, and requested by the public during the course of the hearing. The 12 criteria for review are clear, and we've met that standard in every fashion. There really are no open issues with regard to the issue of site plan approval, and we believe we're entitled to proceed with that. And with that, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have Mr. Jeffrey Dirk summarize some of the traffic that he did discuss with you in some length before, answer some questions that have been raised, and once again, focus on the mitigative steps that we are suggesting as part of our application.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, for the record, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm the managing partner with Vanessa and Associates, and we're the transportation consultants on the project. So what I'd like to do tonight is to walk through what we've done since the last time I was before you and presented kind of a full overview of the transportation analysis for the project. And I would mention, we very much appreciate the diligence of your peer review consultant as well as town staff. We received a lot of good comments as they relate to the analysis that we've undertaken as a part of the project, but also the mitigation measures. So I think it's important, and I know the board knows this, but for the public to understand that we're not just adding net new traffic on the roadway without doing anything. There's a significant amount of improvements that are taking place that deal with capacity on roadways, on mobility, and I think mobility most important as it relates to the safety of pedestrians and bicycles. And then addressing the access and circulation as it relates to the project itself, as Mark had mentioned, an important part in the site plan review. So just in terms of going through where we've been and where we're at now, if you remember at the last public hearing in March when I had presented, we were in the process of undertaking an updated traffic analysis. And the purpose of that was to address comments from your review consultant, primarily relating to refreshing or updating the traffic count data. So we undertook that effort. Published a brand new traffic study in April of 2024 that had brand new traffic counts that were done in March of 2024. We in fact conducted those counts shortly after that public hearing. We presented the data. I gave you kind of a snapshot of some of the information that we were looking at as a part of the updated analysis. Your review consultant had the opportunity to undertake a review of that updated traffic study. They issued a letter in the beginning of May that basically confirmed, as Mark had said, the methodology that we use in conducting analysis, the validity of the data, validity of the trip generation in terms of our estimates of the amount of traffic that the project would produce, looking at the distribution of traffic, because we did have some discussions about how trucks would get to and from the site, the specific roadways they would use. And then the analysis that we undertook as a part of the project. That analysis is the basis of the improvements that we've recommended as they relate to specific capacity and safety related enhancements at these intersections. And then lastly, mobility. So all of those elements of the project by way of that May 2nd review letter were addressed and affirmed. There were some outstanding comments from that letter, and those outstanding comments were really looking at more site plan related issues. So looking at how trucks would access and circulation within the project site, looking at pedestrian connectivity. So how do pedestrians not only walk along Route 70, but if you're within the site, how do you get to those facilities that we're going to be constructing as a part of the project? And then lastly, the parking supply. As you know, an important part of this project is we're minimizing impacts is to make sure we don't build more parking than we actually need. And so we have some land banking and parking and just showing where's that going to occur, what happens and when would that be constructed. So Bowman, your review consultant, undertook a review of that, and then they issued a second letter on May 28th that had, again, it was just a couple of comments about some sidewalk infrastructure and connectivity, as well as looking at that parking again, and wanted a commitment from us that to the extent that we needed that reserved parking, that there was a mechanism for the board to put a condition on the project that would say how we would monitor the parking to determine if and when that parking would be needed. So those two outstanding items were addressed by email, actually, I think this week. Your consultant turned around a review letter very quickly, and we very much appreciate that. And as our attorney had mentioned, all of the issues as they relate to traffic and your review consultant have been closed out. So we have what we would call a clean review letter, that there's nothing else for us to really respond to. And I think the important part of that really is, as your consultant has looked at it, the recommendations that we have relative to mitigation, they're comfortable with, so that that would form the basis at the appropriate time for conditions of approval. So that list has been compiled for consideration by the board. And so that's kind of the last step in the peer review process in terms of reviewing the project. Next slide, Haley. So I just have a couple of summary slides, and I'll go through these very quickly because these are what you've seen before. Again, the purpose of this is really shows the context of the project site, but just the comprehensive nature of the transportation assessment that we had looked at. It's not just Shrewsbury specific. We also looked at and worked with Boylston as well as the city of Worcester in conducting this analysis. And of course, Mass DOT and the Regional Planning Agency were also involved in our transportation analysis. So again, very comprehensive, and your review consultant had looked at it. Next slide, Haley. This slide that I had put together was really to look at what you had heard early on in the presentation, is that the project has been downsized. As it relates to trip generation in the project, although I think others may take exception with this, warehouse uses don't generally generate a lot of traffic on a per 1,000 square foot basis. So even though the size of the building has gone down, or the combined buildings have gone down a little over 31,000 square feet, as it relates to our trip generation numbers, it's not a significant change in the drop of the square footage that's here. So what you see is in terms of a net decrease in traffic resulting from the reduction in the building size, it's about 4 peak hour trips. So what it means is in terms of the traffic analysis, nothing has really changed. We don't consider that to be material. What I did want to point out, just for context, as it relates to Boylston and specifically to Route 140, we are a third-party monitoring agent for a warehouse development that the town of Boylston has approved off of Route 140. There's about 2 warehouse buildings, similar to what you see here, that were approved as a spec warehouse facility, somewhere around 650,000 square feet. As a part of the condition of approval that the town placed on that warehouse building, they are required to do monitoring. You see the same thing that's been recommended as a part of this project. We have a traffic monitoring program as well. We're the third-party agency that does the monitoring and reports that monitoring to the town of Boylston. And I point that out because as you're looking at the traffic numbers for this project, they were developed the same way they were developed for that warehouse building. As we're the monitoring agent, what we found is the numbers are significantly less than what has been estimated for the project. It is about 78% lower in terms of actual traffic generation from those 2 warehouse buildings to what the original estimates developed the same way we've done it for this project. The truck traffic numbers are also significantly lower. The truck traffic numbers are about 95% lower than was originally estimated. I mention that because what we're designing for and what we've estimated traffic numbers for is likely going to be significantly more than is actually going to be generated by this warehouse building. But that being said, these are the numbers we want to work with, because we're also being held to this monitoring program. The monitoring program has certain triggers that say that we can't generate any more traffic or more than 10% than what you see on here, which is a typical variation. So actual reality is going to be we're not going to generate these numbers, but we're also going to demonstrate that to you. And I think the process would work similar to what Boylston has done, which there'll be a third-party agent, monitor these numbers, report it to the town, and then we've kind of laid out those, what's going to be measured, how it will be assessed, and then what the triggers are for additional mitigation above and beyond that. So that's not only something that we've suggested and that your review consultant has looked at to be included as part of your condition, the state highway department is also requiring it. So it's going to be in two places. It's going to be a part of your condition. It's also going to be a part of the Mass DOT driveway permit that will go along with this project. So it's going to be checks and balances in two cases. Next slide, here. This slide just shows the dispersal of traffic. So we had talked about kind of the traffic numbers and then how those traffic numbers get dispersed onto the roadway network. So we've discussed this at the last hearing. This is for passenger car trips. I wanted to focus on the next slide, Haley. So this is the truck trips. And as we talked about, the truck trips are really oriented to and from Interstate 290. And the majority of those trips are going to be using the Main Street interchange. A smaller number of those will be using the Plantation Street interchange to get onto the highway. But what I wanted to point out on the slide here, because I think there was some misinterpretation of what's shown here, about 40% of the truck trips are going into the north warehouse driveway. So there was some confusion, I think, by way of looking at truck traffic going into Boylston, and I think the town had thought that there was 40% of the trucks going to and from Boylston. That's not the case. It's 40% of the trucks going into the north driveway to the north warehouse building. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know if you had caught that in some of the comment letters, but we've responded to that and worked with Boylston so that they understand just kind of how this figure is actually read. Next slide, Haley. So now looking at the recommendations, I won't go through all of these, but I've highlighted a couple of the recommendations in red. And these are new items that were either added as a result of comments from your peer review consultant or comments that we had received either from the board or from the public as well in terms of enhancements to the mitigation program itself. So the first item I've shown, these are the site access and circulation recommendations that we had gone through at the last hearing. What I wanted to point out, which is shown in red here, is that there has been an expansion of the sidewalk infrastructure as a part of the project. So as you recall, we're building sidewalk and bike lanes along Route 70. So along the site frontage, we're reconstructing the entire roadway. We're going to be adding a sidewalk along what we've called the old Main Street, or the old Route 70 side, which is where the residential side is. That sidewalk will then tie into existing sidewalk along Route 70. We're providing a crosswalk to get across Route 70 that will include a pedestrian actuated rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That crosswalk is occurring at the north driveway, so the north warehouse building driveway. What we've done as a part of the project, based on comments from your review consultant, is we now have a sidewalk that runs along the center driveway. So these are the driveways that serve the employee parking lots. So the employee parking lots will have sidewalks and crosswalks that will connect to a sidewalk that will run along the center driveway. That sidewalk will then extend up to Route 70, and there will be a sidewalk along the Route 70 project frontage between the center driveway and the north driveway that allows for an employee to come from the building, walk on a sidewalk, get to that crosswalk, cross the street, and then get to the sidewalk on Route 70, with the idea being that if they wanted to go to the restaurant or convenience store that's on the old Route 70 side, they can walk there. They don't need to get into a car to be able to drive there. So that's something that's been added since the last meeting and is shown on the current version of the site plan. Next slide, Haley. This plan, very small, so you don't see it, but this does show the addition of that sidewalk segment. Thank you, Haley. That's been added to the plan. This shows it in a little bit more detail, and you can see where the crossing is going to take place at the north driveway. And again, there's a detail of that rectangular rapid flashing beacon as well as that location. Next slide, Haley. As it relates to the off-site improvements, we've had discussion with both the town and Mass DOT specifically as it relates to the Main Street interchange with Interstate 290. As our mitigation commitment, what we've committed to doing, and again, this was discussed with Mass DOT, is undertaking what we call a design report for improvements at the interchange. So either looking at potential signalization of the interchange or installing modern roundabouts. And that's kind of the newest thing that Mass DOT looks at is to see if we can get away from signalization, have modern roundabouts at the interchanges. There's a lot of construction of roundabouts going on at interchanges now, specifically along Route 146. A lot of those serve warehouse buildings, so the same type of thing is being looked at here. The first step in obtaining any funding or advancing design or improvements at these interchanges is this design report. So we've committed to undertaking this design report, which then unlocks the ability for funding for the construction of improvements at that interchange. So we've committed to doing that as a part of this project. Kind of a tangential piece of that is in discussions with the town is understanding that just down the road, although not within our study area, as you're heading toward the downtown area, is the Old Mill Road intersection with Main Street. And that during specific times of the day, that intersection experiences some surges in traffic and the signal starts to operate over capacity, causing queuing, and some points that queuing starting to interfere with the interchange area. So we were requested to look at opportunities to improve the operations of the traffic signal. It's actually, as you know, two very closely spaced intersections that operate as a single signalized intersection. So we've agreed to undertake the necessary technical analyses and to develop an optimal timing and phasing plan with the idea of using some of the inefficiencies in that traffic signal operations, improving upon it so that we can reduce the queuing. So that does provide some benefit, at least trying to get it so that the queue doesn't back up to the interchange area, so providing some level of relief as it relates to that intersection. So that's an added item that we've agreed to do as a part of the project. The next slide here. The next two slides show the safety improvements that we were undertaking. These are two intersections in Worcester that are high crash locations that we're going to be undertaking safety improvements that we've identified in consultation with Mass DOT, the Regional Planning Agency, and the City of Worcester. So this is the Route 70 Plantation Street, Boylston Street intersection where we're planning to do some improvements, both signalization, geometric striping, signs, and sightline improvements at that intersection. Next slide. This is the Lincoln Street intersection with Plantation Street. Again, thinking about the truck activity, this is an important intersection that we need to make sure operates safely and efficiently. So traffic signal timing improvements, lane geometry improvements, signs and markings are going to be undertaken at that intersection. Next slide, Ellen. As I mentioned, we have a detailed transportation demand management program. So these are just really, as we're building out this mobility infrastructure for pedestrians and bicycles, encouraging people to use those, our employees to use those alternative modes of transportation, and then, of course, continuing discussions with the Worcester Regional Transit Agency to provide bus service. Next slide. So now we're getting to the traffic monitoring program as a part of the project. And again, this is the checks and balances. This is to make sure that as your review consultant has undertaken the review of the traffic study, and you've heard my presentation, you've seen their peer reviews, is to make sure that everything stays in line with what we've estimated for the project, because our mitigation is based on those numbers. So we want to make sure that we're not exceeding those, because then we would have, which typically turn unmitigated impacts. And so what we want to do is make sure we're mitigating our impacts. So the monitoring program ensures that that's taking place, that we're in bounds of the numbers or in line with the numbers that we've estimated. And then it also includes specific things where if we're not, this is what happens. And so there's kind of that carrot and stick approach to the monitoring program. But what I wanted to point out is what's shown in red here, which is the addition of parking monitoring. So not only are we going to be monitoring traffic at the driveways to make sure we're not generating excess traffic, but we're also going to demonstrate that the parking supply is adequate. And as you've seen on the site plans, we have reserved parking. So that monitoring, which you're going to get a report on an annual basis, will be able to demonstrate that we don't need that additional parking, or that we need it and we're going to build it. And I think the tenants or the applicant will be the first to come forward and say, we need more parking, we're going to build out the spaces. But this allows for kind of the checks and balances again to the town, saying we're monitoring it and this is what we're finding. Kind of tangentially as it relates to this is also helpful as if another warehouse comes before you, because you'll actually have some data. So you can kind of look at some real world numbers, because you'll have these monitoring reports, and think about what might be before you as another project as well. Is that the last slide, Haley?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So again, that concludes my presentation. As I had said, we have closed out all of the comments from your review consultant, and the goal of that really is to make sure that you have a comprehensive list of potential measures to include in any decision as a part of the project, including this monitoring program. So I'll turn it back to Mark. I'm certainly here to answer any questions you might have.
So just in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we believe that we have demonstrated that as far as the special permit's concerned, that the warehouse itself and the impervious area created there, which creates the trigger for the requirement of the special permit, will not endanger the aquifer in any fashion. In fact, will improve it. That we've provided all of the information requested or required by the bylaw for site plan approval, demonstrated that within the boundaries of the site, which is the primary focus of site plan approval, the site will work in an appropriate fashion. And I think what you just heard from Jeff indicates that beyond that, as part of the proposal, we are addressing known conditions off-site with regard to traffic that are identified as issues in this community today, and we're advancing some curative or steps with regard to a number of those. And for all of those reasons, we would respectfully request that the board grant the special permit for the aquifer protection and grant site plan approval with conditions that we can work with Mr. McGoldrick on, and certainly incorporate what Jeff's indicated we've agreed to as part of the traffic. Well, as always, glad to answer any questions that staff or any member of the board has with regard to the project in any fashion. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody? Questions?
Right.
Yes? No?
Not right now.
You have any? Mr. Rayo?
No questions for now.
Okay. I have, maybe a couple, but one for sure. The Boylston truck counts. Which two warehouses are you talking about? I know the FedEx.
Correct.
Is the other one the Rand Whitney one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So, okay, just to be clear, we're not talking about the one that's empty right now.
No.
Okay.
No, it's fully occupied. In fact, that was the trigger for the trigger for the monitoring was reaching a certain level of occupancy of that building.
Okay. And you, I don't think you mentioned it, but Boylston had given you a few more future projects.
They did.
Current projects that would be, and that's included in the counts now, right?
It was included in the April updated traffic study. Yes, the town planner was very gracious in sending us all the traffic reports for the projects they wanted included, and we've included those in our analysis.
Okay. And just, I want to follow up on that. What appears to be a misreading of the report with the 40% of the trucks. The letter that, right here, Mr. Hennigan had sent, their understanding of the plans was 40% of the
Right.
trucks were going down Route 70 to 140, right?
Right, and they're actually, they're going up Route 170 to the north driveway and turning right into the project site,
Right.
and then 40% turn left out of the project site and head south on Route 70. So they're coming and going from Shrewsbury, not coming and going from Boylston.
Okay, I think the letter that we got came before the final report, right?
Could be, yeah, that could be. But we're going to answer that letter, but I think it's just a misreading of that chart that was there, which is, understandable.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, somebody's got something they want to ask or say, so if anybody would like to make a comment, ask a question, yes, sir, in back.
Hi, Andy Barnes, 115 Clinton Street. We gotta get a tech person here next time because both of these monitors going off. I see most of you guys don't have laptops. I can't read what's going on. They're going off. It's important information that everybody needs to be able to understand, especially you guys, right? So, and the closed captioning obviously is a big deal. There's a lot of people that can't hear at all. I can barely hear, and my hearing's still pretty good. So, anyways, I had a couple questions. You said that there was a traffic study done again in March. But it was only done on 2 intersections, right? Is that correct?
You have to ask the chairman.
I apologize.
Ask me.
Mr. DiPaolo.
Yes.
It appears in the letter dated May 2nd that the traffic study that was done in March 2024 was along both Route 70 and Holden Street. Is that just 2 locations, or is that all of the locations we were originally talking about?
Mr. Chairman, it's all of the locations. We basically redid the entire traffic study, so we conducted, probably what he's referring to is that we did 2 48-hour automatic traffic recorder counts. Those were done at 2 locations, but traffic counts were done at all 15 intersections that we had undertaken our analysis. So basically, it was a redo of all of the traffic counts, including the automatic traffic recorder counts and the manual turning movement counts at all of the study intersections. So it was a redo from scratch.
And do we have specific dates that those were taken on? Because it just says March.
It's being reported.
I don't see it in the report.
So if you look at the traffic study, and I'll give you the exact page from the April updated study. It's on page, so there's 15 intersections. They were all recounted as a part of the traffic study. The exact dates that those traffic counts were done. If you look at the April updated traffic study on page 18, the automatic traffic recorder counts were conducted on March 6th through March 7th, which is a Wednesday through Thursday, which is typical of when we collect traffic counts. It's the midday periods. We don't count on Mondays or Fridays.
Okay.
The manual turning movement counts that were done at the study intersections were done on March 6th and on March 28th. So a Wednesday and a Thursday.
Great.
That they were done.
Thank you.
Okay, and again, that's on page 18, which also talks about how we adjust the traffic counts.
Great, thank you. And it sounds like, and this is a related follow-up. It sounds like you guys are working on numbers that are worst case scenario.
On a number of levels, yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So the traffic that we're specifically talking about, well, maybe not specifically in the traffic report, but the traffic that I'm most concerned about is the diesel trucks, right? And the reports that we're getting for, hey, no reason to worry about diesel trucks, right, is assuming that in 2027, all of a sudden, all of the trucks, not all of them, right, it's assuming that there's going to be this 80% reduction in emissions. I've got no problem with trucks. I've got no problem with truck drivers. It's a noble profession. I bet we got some truck drivers in the room tonight. Are there any truck drivers in the room tonight? How old's your truck, sir?
Sorry, this is not a conversation between
Oh, okay.
the audience.
Sorry. I would assume that his truck is old. I would say, and by that I mean 5 years, 10 years, right? A diesel truck is made to get many more miles than your average commercial vehicle. So the idea that we're going to say this is worst case scenario and then also say that the diesel emissions are based on an EPA guideline that trucks manufactured after 2027 need to have this reduction in emissions is not a worst case scenario. It is a best case scenario. In fact, it is not likely that there will be more regulations because the current trend is less environmental regulations. There's a better chance that that EPA regulation will be struck down than it will be strengthened in the future. So I do not think that this is worst case scenario. And I am worried about the diesel emissions, and I do not think that we have a sufficient answer. So I would like worst case scenario, and if worst case, I'm not saying worst case realistic scenario, right? Let's not say that all the trucks are 20 years old, but maybe we can do a study. We've got warehouses in Boylston that apparently we have intimate knowledge of. We can go around and find out how old the average truck is. We could then find out, okay, if that's how old the average truck is, then what are the diesel numbers actually going to look like in the worst case scenario of 554 trucks? So, and in relation to the sound study that was specifically done at my house, I have concerns with the validity of that as well. I think the contour map directly contradicts the numbers that showed up at my house. So I also take pause with the fact that the maps that we are being given, right? The contour map's fine. I get it. You get the contour map. But like, it looks like these retaining walls are being drawn in MS Paint. with a pink marker, okay? But then we have renderings of the site that are 3D renderings. The sound software that they're using, Cadna-A, is a sophisticated 3D software, which they mention in their own report. We're not being given 3D models. That software can pull out a vertical plane plot that shows me exactly where the sound deflects all the way from the warehouse to my house. But what I'm being given and what you're all being given is, trust us, we put a receptor there. We're good. It just so happens that that receptor is exactly 1 decibel under the allowable 10 decibels, right? I find that really convenient. I also would love to see the 3D rendering with the actual retaining walls and the height of them. If they very much care about protecting the residents, then we could talk about how those retaining walls could easily be 3-4 times as high for barely a cost compared to what the entire cost is going to be, which could reduce the sound decibel level increase to 5 decibels, which is much better than the 10 decibels, which doubles the sound, right? Logarithmic scale, which they have explained to us. Every 10 decibels is doubling the sound. It's not a little bit. It's twice as much, okay? So I am not done with the sound. I am not done with the diesel. I do not think that we're done asking questions. And I would like the sound study person from Tech Environmental to show back up and maybe even give us a example, right? He's got the whole plot thing, put everybody at ease, right? And then go get the numbers from the diesel, from the tractor trailers, put everybody's mind at ease. Go, you know what? Actually, you're wrong, Andy. Most of the tractor trailers are actually pretty new. And that statute is going to stick around for a long time. So you have an opportunity to make everybody feel a lot better by asking more questions. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
if we could, Mr. Wallace is here, so it's probably worth him explaining to you his process with regard to the follow-up.
I think right now, I'd rather hear from a few more people, and then we'll come back to it, because I don't want to get into a debate between 2 people for the next half hour.
Okay.
So, anyone else, somebody hasn't, oh.
Hello, Rachel Missel, 23 Cypress Ave, again. I want to start with a little story. We've talked about idling, and we've been assured that there's a 5-minute idling bylaw in Massachusetts, and that all we need to do is report. So tonight I got here a little bit early, which was kind of amazing, given the way tonight went for me. And I was standing right out here, and there was a truck from Peregrine Property Management idling for 15 minutes with nobody in it. And so I went around the corner and found a police officer and reported it to him. And he went over there and I assume did what he needed to do. He came back around, pointed out to me that that truck shouldn't have even been parked there, much less idling. So just goes to show you, if somebody's willing to sit on municipal property around the corner from the police station, when there's a giant event going on the grass, with their car idling, truck idling, with nobody in it, I have a funny feeling we're going to see some idling around these warehouses. So, on to some of my prepared remarks, hopefully. We thought we were coming to this meeting to talk about traffic, and it seems that the applicant is ready to present closing arguments and wrap things up.
It doesn't make any difference what they
Well,
want to do.
the reason I bring it up is because we've been asked to keep to specific topics.
What I was going to tell you was, tonight, any topic related to this is fine.
Thank you very much, Mr. DiPaolo. It has been a source of frustration. And to that end, I brought a little visual aid. So this is a puzzle that my mother of blessed memory loved very much. And the thing about puzzles is this. You can take a piece here, and you can take a piece here, and you can say, these pieces, they look really good. But until you put them together and see, oh, they don't fit, you realize that those, they don't look so good. And until you put the whole thing together, you don't get a fulsome picture. So I know that I speak for a lot of the residents when I say that we have felt as if this board has tried to, in the spirit of handling a very big project in sizable chunks that you can digest, that we all can digest, we have felt like there has not been an appropriate attention paid to the big picture. With regard to traffic, as I'm sure you're aware, in the zoning bylaws of Shrewsbury, under the heading of prohibited uses, number 6 reads, business, commercial, or industrial uses which would be injurious, obnoxious, offensive, or hazardous to a neighborhood by reason of vibration, noise, smoke, cinders, dust, gas, fumes, chemicals, excessively bright light, or refuse matter. Use is hazardous because of danger of flooding, inadequate drainage, or inaccessibility to firefighting apparatus or other protective service. Wanted to read the whole thing. Those are all prohibited. The increase in traffic is going to be monumental, unless maybe it's 90% less than what they originally proposed. So I don't know, we're going to talk out of both sides of our mouths here. The reality is you can't add 1,500 plus trucks and cars a day to the town without significant consequences. The hazards from traffic alone will include noise, even if the applicant erects some sound barriers for after the trucks enter their site. Remember, that's after they're on the site, not going through the neighborhoods, up and down the roads. Excuse me, I lost my place. I thought I was prepared. The hazards from traffic alone will include noise, diesel fumes, and bright lights from the trucks. And these hazards will affect the health of nearby residents and students at Shrewsbury High, exacerbating asthma symptoms in some and causing asthma in others, contributing to heart and pulmonary diseases as well as strokes and cancers, potentially. I'm not sure how these don't disqualify this project based on our own bylaws. And by the way, the applicant thinks that this is a regional issue over which you have no jurisdiction. Let's also consider the fact that students going from Shrewsbury High and St. John's will be sharing the road with over 1,500 more vehicles per day. When you think about the intersections such as Holden and Main or Main Street and 290, intersections which are already dangerous, and there was a very bad wreck on Holden and Main a few weeks ago, you have to wonder why we're even considering a project of this size and scope. Rotaries that have been proposed, those are going to get backed up when people are trying to get onto and off of 290. In terms of the bigger picture, the Select Board has developed and begun implementing a Climate Action and Resiliency Plan, aka CARP, which seeks to bring the municipal part of the town's greenhouse gas emissions down to net zero by 2050. Big shout out to Selco, whose goal is to be net zero by 2032 or sooner, and they're on track. But if thousands of tons of emissions resulting from the traffic this project generates offsets those gains and even surpasses them, then what have we accomplished? If municipal boards aren't taking the CARP seriously enough to consider the entirety of the environmental impact of the proposed project rather than the various pieces alone, then what hope have we of creating positive change for future generations? It comes down to this. You aren't required to grant a special permit. And based on the bylaw I cited, the project need not be approved at all. If the applicant can't build without asking for special accommodations, then perhaps the project isn't right for that site. The sentiment seems to be that something is better than nothing, due to the rapacious consequences of activity on the property up to this point, which have been reportedly referenced, but it seems not addressed. If that's the case, maybe we shouldn't be that desperate to approve this project. Thank you so much for your time and for hearing us. I hope you're listening to us as well.
Okay. I know you want to show your support, but please, let's try to keep it calm. These hearings, everybody's behaved very well. Everybody's been respectful, and you start with the clapping, it leads to something else, and we don't want to go there tonight. So, anyways, anybody else who wants to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, Robert Celeste, over on Sleepy Hollow Road, town meeting member, precinct 3. Can appreciate everybody's concerns tonight, and there's a great show of support as well. I just wanted to give an alternative view as well. I think there's got to be some kind of workable solution here, because I think it's good business. I think the company has at least tried to show a good show of faith, if you will. My understanding, back in 2020 and 2022, the town meeting members voted for the change in the zone. And, I find all of this admirable and people speaking and voicing, but it's an investment in the area. It's, jobs, it's revenue for the town. And certainly, if the concerns can be addressed and, adhered to, but for me, I think it's a good thing. It's an investment in the area. There seems to be some commitments to the infrastructure as well. So, may not be the popular opinion in this room, but certainly in the town meetings have been supermajority votes. So, it's not a complete against this initiative or project too. So, I just wanted to voice that alternative view in here. And again, thank you for everybody, and the town and the residents as well as the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I thought I saw some hands. You had your hand up.
Brian Costello, 398 Walnut Street. Through the chair, the gentleman from GFI mentioned that, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, the statement that you made was, if we meet the bylaws, then there's no, you meet the bylaws as established, there's no way or no ability for the board to say no. Is that more or less, or do you want to?
Through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Daniel.
With specific reference to the issue of site plan approval, which is different and distinct from the special permit for the aquifer.
Yep.
The only basis the bylaw gives the board to disapprove the site plan is if it finds that there has not been adequate information provided as required by the bylaw.
Okay, so through the chair, if they say no, what will you do?
We're not getting to hypotheticals.
That's not a hypothetical, because it's a yes or no answer.
Well, I don't think that they should be put in a position of what they're gonna do if we vote no.
So,
Or we vote yes, or what all of you folks are gonna do if we vote yes. Let's try to keep it to the issue of the project,
okay.
all right?
So a comment.
I understand your concern.
So my comment is, no questions. They will sue us. And when they sue us, what does that say? This company, to be clear, I want to be clear, they don't care about Shrewsbury. They don't care about the people in this room. They care about building things, a lot of things, in a lot of towns in central Massachusetts. It's a multi-billion-dollar company with a lot of resources, a lot of political connections, a lot of ability to make things happen. I think it's time. that we
You know,
listen
let's-
to the
let's,
people.
Wait, let's try to keep it to project and not try to assign their thoughts and and what they might do to them, because you don't know. I don't know. And you know what? Everybody has a right, if they feel that they've been aggrieved, to go to court.
I agree.
One of the wonderful things about our country, we spend all our time in court. So let's see where we get, and then we'll worry about what happens. I think this board is going to try to do what it thinks is the right thing to do for the residents and for the business. And everybody's not going to be happy. But that's what we're going to try to do.
Understood.
And after we make a decision, whatever that decision is, then if they want to pursue it, or if everybody in the neighborhood wants to pursue it, then that's their right. But let's just try to stay with the issues that you want to try to get addressed in this project. Okay? Or, I mean, if you want to say you don't think the project is the right project, fine. But let's not start talking about things that might never happen. Let's try to keep it to the subject that we have, a proposed project that we're getting input on.
Okay, I have one more. A business plan looks to the future to figure out what could happen. That's smart planning. So that's what everybody does. That's how you plan. You plan by thinking about the things that might happen. So you always ask those questions of yourselves. I won't ask them any more questions, and I won't ask you any more questions, but that's a fact. So I disagree with you in that statement. I would also say that I think, you know, I know you guys have a hard job. I'm not picking on you guys at all, trust me. You don't get paid for this. You're volunteers. You do a lot of work here. And seriously, I think we all appreciate that. But at the end of the day, you don't represent developers, and I know you don't. You don't represent attorneys, and you don't represent consultants. You don't represent politicians in Boston. You represent us. And I think a lot of us are saying, this is just not good. Skip the aquifers. It's too much. It's a little bit of greed for a lot small tax dollars, and it causes more grief than good. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Well, sir, she had her hand up before.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandy Bigelow. I live at 23 Flag Street in Boylston. I think I'm the only Boylstonite here. I'm going to keep this really brief because I am not an eloquent speaker. I'm a veteran, and I suffer from PTSD, and I have COPD, which is causing me a lot of difficulties in breathing. So I am concerned about the diesel. I'm concerned about the noise. I'm also concerned about my property. We live right next to where the buildings will be built. So yeah, I'm concerned about my property values tanking. As far as the noise studies that were done, we weren't really on Boylston, on Flag Street, we weren't really included in anything that was being done. As a matter of fact, I have no idea what businesses are even going to be in these warehouses. So as far as the noise goes, whenever there are sudden loud noises like, let's say, the dump trucks with the gates on the back, when they dump stuff, and then I have problems. I have problems sleeping. I don't know what kind of effect, I don't know what kind of lighting they're going to have. Do we know what kind of lighting there's going to be? If it's going to be like directed at Flag Street or?
Mr. McGover can answer that question half, when you finish.
Sure. Sure. But basically, that's it. I just wanted a couple of my neighbors, I asked if anybody else was coming with me tonight. And they said, basically, we're the little guys, we don't matter. Nobody's going to listen to us.
Everybody matters.
Yeah.
And your Flag Street, 99%, I've been on it, but I want to make sure. You're talking about the street that's right after the project, right? Going to Boylston.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to look into see how much attention they paid to that.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm at a loss because I feel like I know that this is a Shrewsbury issue, but I live right there, you know, and I do have concerns. I'm not trying to say that business is bad or anything like that. I'm just asking that we remember some people that care about the land and our properties.
I want you to know, actually, this weekend, because like I say, I have no life, I was going through all the plans, and I was specifically looking at Flag Street, because on the side of the street closest to the project, I thought there were houses there that were going to be affected. And I found out that those two properties I was talking about had been purchased. And I was looking at the sound stuff and what the results said, but I'm happy over the next week to talk to the proponents and talk to the planning department and make sure that it was looked at.
Thank you.
But I was looking at that. I was looking at the walls. Not that I'm an expert, but I don't want you to think I know everybody's not going to like whatever decision we make on either side, but we're trying to take into account people's concerns and what can be done.
I appreciate that.
But I wish we had the power people think we have, because we don't. So we do what we can. But anyways, we'll get back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Well,
your
at
time.
least let you know what was looked at and what they think is going to happen, and we'll take it from there.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
For question on the lighting, you can answer that, gentlemen?
Yeah, so we have a standard condition that's on all projects, that lighting be downlit to the maximum extent possible. So that is a standard condition for downlighting and dark sky compliance. We do pay special attention to the lighting around the abutting properties for shielding, specific to residential abutters, and we consistently work with that from the project proposal to construction and post-occupancy as well.
And there's certain standards that have to be met for whatever they call the washout.
Correct, yeah, and the applicant has provided a photometric plan, but again, we do require that shielding as well as the downlighting, which is extensive. So we do review those as part of our site closeout to make sure that those are not shining, and it's not that you won't see necessarily the lights, but it does block from glare and other bright lights.
If anybody wants to see the photometric plan and wants more details on it, if you call planning department, you can see it.
So I was just a member of the public, mentioned that I'm a soft speaker, so I just wanted to reiterate that we do have dark sky compliance guidelines. That's a standard condition for all projects, and has been for some time now. So all new projects do require dark sky compliance and downlighting, and we also review them for shielding, specifically in relation to blocking glare for abutting properties.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir.
Quick follow-up on the lighting. Why can't we just post it online? Why do we need
You can post it online, but if you look, you can look at it online. It's on there, right?
The lighting plan is online because I don't see it anywhere.
Isn't that part of the whole submission? If it's not, we'll get it online, but you might want to, if you get the time, look at the plan in the office, because it's a lot bigger and easier to read. But we can put it online. If it's not online, we'll put it on.
Thank you. It's
Yes,
part
sir.
of the site plan.
Excuse me?
It's part of the site plan, which is 42 sheets.
Right, I thought it was, but sometimes hard to find stuff on there when you're not used to navigating it. Yes, sir, could we have your name?
Hi,
and-
Tom Grisso, 4 Candlewood Way, Shrewsbury. I'll be brief because some of the things I've heard from the board tonight suggest that they understand what I'm going to say. But I was concerned about that somebody might believe that Mr. Donahue's interpretation, legal interpretation of what the bylaws require, is the only interpretation. If you go to other parts of the bylaws, it clearly states that your overall obligation is to the people of Shrewsbury. That's not just the people around the site. It's the people in the corridor from there to 290 Main. It's all of Shrewsbury's children that come to that intersection to go to high school. That is clearly part of the word neighborhood that was mentioned by another person that was speaking here. It's not just checking off the boxes that have been identified and appropriately measured at the site itself or even the immediate surrounding site. I just wanted to repeat that because that's not the only legal interpretation that you heard, but I think you know that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, Greg Richards, 16 Hickory Drive. I got one just quick technical question. This High Point report dated 5/29. I don't know if it's missing a page, but it says, at least the version I downloaded on the site today says page 1 of 3 on both sheets. So I don't know if there's a page missing or if it's just 2 pages and it's misnumbered.
What, can you repeat, which report was it again?
It's this High Point report on the site plan revisions.
Okay.
Dated 5/29.
Okay.
So I don't know, I just am curious if there was a page missing or if that was just misnumbered. The other thing I just wanted to mention quick on the gentleman's comment earlier on the 2020 town meeting, I did go back because like Mr. Chairman, I don't have a life. So I watched the 2020 town meeting, and at the time, Mr. Donahue's comments in front of town meeting where we just, essentially, we acquired the property in January with COVID, not exactly sure what we're going to do with it, but now this will give us some options and we'll put together a master plan. So at that time, just to be clear, town meeting really had no idea what was going to be developed on the site, and that wasn't exactly what they were voting on. They were voting on a zoning change with no idea what was going to happen in the future. So that's just a clarification, because when you do watch it and you go back and listen to the Zoom calls and everything else at that time, when things are presented, totally different time and very difficult to see from that point what would happen today. Last comment is clarification on traffic, because there's a lot of mention in here about, I guess it would be called Phase 2, or sometimes I guess you reference it as Site B. Because we're talking about 142 Clinton, but you have the Holden Street property as well, because that was part of both those properties were part of the subdivision plans that you continued, which you'll probably are going to pull. But is the 500,000 square foot additional facility included in the traffic study? I think it is, because it says build or no build. So does that mean that traffic impact, assuming that warehouse is not part of this, would be built?
You said went on the west side of Clinton Street?
Yeah, what the property that's defined as 274 Holden Street. Yes, the other.
I'm going to ask you to explain it. It's a little more complicated than a yes and no.
Okay.
So
Give it a shot.
the that other warehouse building is included in what we call the no-build condition. So we've added those traffic numbers in for that warehouse, and then we took the traffic from this project and added it on top of that, and then mitigated what the impacts were associated with that. So essentially what the analysis is based on is 3 warehouse buildings being built, and we're looking at traffic numbers and our impacts, assuming that warehouse is also already built, although it's not a part of this project. And it gets to sort of what everyone was talking about, which is planning. And, you know, the purpose is to make sure that if that were to ever happen, that we've accounted for it, and that we've accounted for traffic volumes that might be associated with it. And then we've looked at how this project might impact those, what we call inflated numbers, and make sure it still works. And that's what the intent is.
Okay. So was that outside of traffic, that additional 500,000 square foot, as part of sound studies and other things taken into account, or is it only because
I think
you have to
I'm gonna give
separate?
this a shot.
Yeah.
I was reading it yesterday. Because it was split off from way at the beginning, there were gonna be 2, and it was decided to split them.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The state said you can split them, but one of the buts was you had to include the traffic. The other but was, the rest of it, you basically have to come over and start from scratch. So they wanted the counts for the traffic that might come online, if they, assuming they built it, to go with this project, right? But they have to start that project when, if they ever get to it, they have to start that like it's a completely separate project. So they have to go through this whole process again.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Get it right?
I think that's my only question. Thank you.
Anyone? Yes, Ms. Dupre.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm short. Christy Dupre, Candlewood Way. I just had a few questions through the chair. In regarding on the site plan, it was referenced tonight that 60% of the, if I wrote it down correctly, 60% is open space. If that is correct, that was referenced tonight.
Yep.
Okay. And of that 60%, is that actual truly buildable land?
It doesn't make any difference. If it's open space, it's open space. If it's a hill, if it's a swamp, if it's open space, it's open space. The bylaw doesn't discriminate like that. There are things like in parking and stuff like that, that sometimes they count for certain part of open space and other times they don't. But for the most part, it's open. You just can't build out the whole thing.
And that's what I was curious on, meaning there's certain areas on the project that are really not being disturbed, and I'm obviously any developer, someone building a home, etc., is going to want to maximize what they could. So I was curious what was even preventing. Therefore, there is then 60% of open space.
But they're not required to have 60%.
I understand they're not required.
Part of it is because there's a decent amount of wetland there. So they wouldn't be able to build in there anyways. You can only do so much there. So I suppose, well, with the aquifer, the buffer zones and stuff, they probably, they almost, I don't know if there's much else that they could be on, beyond that, because if you get into the first zone, you can't build anything there. So they could never build a commercial thing there. Nobody could. So they're restricted partly by the wells. They're restricted by the topography. They're restricted by the wetlands.
Right. I guess my point is it sounds high in a good way of 60% of open space, but these different restrictions, I guess, is therefore increasing that open space. So it sounds good. And I'm glad there is the buffer zone to, obviously, to Newton Pond and the other areas. Again, a developer is going to look at certain things. I think of my street, for example, of why certain things were done a certain way to maximize how they put in a street.
Yes, but when you look at a piece of land, you look at the part that you know you can use,
Right.
right? And if the value's there in the land to do the project you want to do, and you got half of it, 30% of it, that you can't build on, as long as it's economically viable, they do this all the time in town. This isn't just these folks. Everybody does it. The developers do it all the time. And then they donate the land that they don't use to the town, right? So they look at the whole package and say, if I can only develop this much, does it make it a viable project? And if it does, then they usually go ahead, and then the rest of it is open space. So that there is some benefit to the town when they do that. You know what I mean?
I completely understand. Obviously, it was, my reason for asking is, would it have been buildable anyways? That's basically the gist of my question, and that the percentage is so high, meaning it's just not really buildable space anyways.
No.
Therefore, it sounds.
There's probably a little bit more, but.
Okay. All right, thank you. My second question is in regards to traffic. Do they ever include any information for traffic safety regarding on the exit ramps with tractor trailers and the weights of loaded, unloaded, and the safety?
So yes. So there's a couple of things as it relates to safety. First, we look at crash history at all of those locations, including tractor trailers and things like that. But also as we undertake our analysis, especially as it relates to like warehouse type developments, all of the truck numbers that have been cited, those are included in our analysis. So we add additional trucks onto those ramps, and then we conduct our analysis, not only as it relates to the delays and queuing on the ramps, but also the safety. So we evaluate what the increases are, and specifically as a warehouse use, how the additional truck traffic impacts safety as well as traffic operations, because as you said, a fully loaded truck is, what we end up doing is we make it equivalent to like 6 passenger cars. A fully loaded tractor trailer is equal to 6 cars on the roadway. And so the analysis is really undertaken by making an equivalent number of vehicles equal to tractor trailers, and so it's built into our numbers. But as it relates to this use, it's a specific focus of the analysis because of all the concerns that we've heard and we know exist as it relates to tractor trailers.
Okay, thank you. I guess my point in asking is because I do look at the descent of Plantation Street exit, as well as the maneuverability of especially the 290 and Main Street, both under the underpass, making a left-hand turn. I know that's getting on, but I think of obviously 6, 7, 8 shifts, loaded, unloaded, just across 2 lanes of traffic, just to get on 290 is what runs through my head, as well as the traffic for anyone traveling, resident or not, or especially the high school students. A few previous speakers actually did touch on a couple of the things that I was going to talk about regarding back in 2020 when we did speak about this and did vote on that we truly didn't know as town meeting members what the true project was. In addition, when the zoning was redone for the bylaw height change of the building of 2022, again, there were no renderings, there was no discussion of size, there was no discussion of truck bays when that was brought forth to town meeting. If my calculations are close, the size of these warehouses are 16 football fields. Doing a little, I'm definitely the visual person, doing a little site work in Home Depot yesterday, looking at their height chart. I believe that building is 20 feet tall, maybe 20 5 is my best guess. So this building, if I have it correctly, is pretty much going to be double the size, height of Home Depot. And I think that definitely puts it into more perspective. I know I was sitting at Lincoln Street and looking at the trees and going, is that building going to be above all of those trees? I don't know. But that to me puts it in perspective of seeing and being in a building like Home Depot, of thinking of a warehouse build. I do think people are afraid to come forward. I do appreciate someone from another town coming forward, because unfortunately they don't think their voices are heard. I do have one other specific question in regards to the project. Is there any consideration for any type of environmental berms for sound, to help with sound mitigation?
Well, that's what the sound barriers are up on the edge of the property.
I thought they were walls.
Well, they're walls, that's what they are. They're like on.
But actual, no,
Oh, you mean earth berms?
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
I don't think so.
No.
I'm-
Was there
I
any
mean, that
consideration?
wasn't my understanding, but.
Right, I didn't know if there was any consideration of
Um,
those, or the difference of the different
Alternatives were
walls.
evaluated during the course of preparing the site plan.
I don't know.
So my last question is regarding the MIPA review was finished. And my understanding in the MIPA review, there are different things that are going to be needed to be addressed. My one question regarding, especially with traffic and the build, and I understand there's a new design, but MIPA did state that they wanted to see 2 driveways, not 3, if I was reading the MIPA report correctly. So I was just looking to see what the proponent might be, what they can share regarding the MIPA review.
I didn't know that was out yet. I thought you got the draft certificate. I thought when it just came out.
Through you, the chair,
Yeah.
just to clarify, that's correct. We have not received our final EIR. We received our draft environment impact report. The comment came from Mass DOT, maybe better suited for Jeff to kind of explain, if Attorney Donahue feels it's necessary to talk about MIPA at this time.
Well, I just want to put it in context to where we are this evening. We're proposing 3 driveways. If MassDOT only allows 2 driveways, we have to come back to you. We have to start all over. We know that, okay? Sooner or later, you gotta put 1 foot forward to go forward. So, MassDOT's gonna make a decision, and we're gonna have more conversation with them, and, there's gonna be a final environmental impact report, and it's gonna set the rules, and if that means we have to change the plan, then we're gonna come back.
Okay.
Okay. I would hope this would be continued till there is an approval from MIPA for the final.
I just want to clarify.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
MIPA is not a permit. It's not a permit. You don't receive a permit from MIPA.
It's really recommendations for state agencies to use.
Yes.
It's a big study. It's
And
important, but.
there are many things that
Right.
needed to be addressed. So I would hope that it would continue, and before a decision is made, that it would wait.
We're gonna think about that, because what the MIPA report comes out with, it doesn't relate specifically to the project and the site,
Sure.
but we're not sure yet what we're gonna do. We haven't even talked about it. To your issue about the height of the building, you're right, it's 48 feet. Again, I was looking over the plans over the past few days, and maybe you all knew it, but I didn't know. That building is like 16 to 19 feet below the grade of Clinton Street. So it's still a 50-foot building, but when you're looking at it, and to your point about the trees, it won't stick up above the trees as much as people will think, because it's gonna be set lower. That doesn't make it smaller. It just, I think it helps reduce the scale. visually, when you look at it, it doesn't make it any smaller. But it is sitting down, when the driveways come down off of Clinton Street, and they drop down quite a bit.
Right, in my understanding, as north on 70, and there will be a very high retaining wall as well. So the people on that side will then have to see a large retaining wall, parking lot, etc.
No,
And
this-
has there?
No, there's no retaining wall going up above the earth. The retaining wall's to, if it's 30 feet, the retaining wall's gonna go 30 feet, whatever the number is. There's a sound barrier up in the back corner. That's gonna stick up. I don't know how big is that, do you know? Or just how tall it is, roughly?
25 feet.
The sound barrier is.
About half the size of the building.
Well, if we're looking for sound mitigation and it takes 25 feet,
No, meaning scale. Again, I'm a visual person. If you told me a 20-foot boat, that could be a dinghy for all I know.
right,
That's my point. Has there
Well-
in regards to height and layout, has there been any consideration of the board to do any balloon testing to let people see where the buildings would be and the height?
no, to be honest with you, I know it sounds high. I don't think that's something we would do. It's not like a cell tower, where 150 feet.
But there are other projects in town, I believe, that have done it before. That's why I asked.
You might be right. I'm not aware of any that did, but you could be right.
I could talk to you about it later.
All right.
Thank you.
You got my number, right?
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Robert Leo, 26 Sewell Drive. I'm a direct abutter to the property that's in question. I actually came tonight just to get more information, like you all. I didn't have any prepared notes or questions because we've been living with Worcester sand and stone and gravel, whatever you want to call it, for the last 25 years, making noise and lights and all sorts of things, explosions, you know, I don't have to tell you. Anyway, a couple of questions. I thank you for the lighting survey because I'd love to see that because we're actually below. So when you talk about the 50 feet, Sewell Drive is as low as you can get before the water. So we're going to be looking up at the entire building in its full glory of 48 feet, plus whatever the grade is. So the lights will be shining down. We'd love to understand that a little bit better. The second thing, and this was brought up at the very, very, very first community meeting we had, which was the sound. And they said they were going to go do some studies, but I never heard anything more about it. Figuring that we were the closest property to the construction, think maybe. I might have heard something about it, but I didn't. I apologize if there was something I should have done. I don't know. So if there's any information we can get on the sound study, I would appreciate that as well to better understand, where we are and relative to where it is. And then the last thing is on Sewell Drive, there was a whole bunch of surveyors, because this is how I get my information. I see the surveyors walk up and down the road, and I go, what are you doing here? And they were surveying for some cutouts for some drainage and some swales and things like that. And they said that there was supposed to be some work done to the first 150, 175 feet of Sewell Drive. So I'd be interested to see, and I apologize again, I didn't go through the 74 pages of the plan, and maybe there's something in there that I missed or didn't see, so I apologize. But if I could come to the planning board tomorrow or the next day and sit and look at this stuff, I'd greatly appreciate it. I just feel, as we being the closest people, this is the most information I've gotten about this is at this meeting. And we made ourselves clear at the first meeting, the very initial meeting 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, February, I don't know, last year, that we were open for dialogue and discussion about anything that was happening in the area that we would love to know. Because, like I said, we put up with Worcester sand now. something new there, to someone earlier's comment, does not bother me, that if we decide to make the property better and make the environment better, make the conditions of living there better, I'm all for it. All right? Sometimes doing nothing isn't the right answer either. So I'm just looking for a balance and just looking to understand a little bit more about what's going on.
So specifically, you're looking for the light study?
The lighting thing, because if it's 50 feet above Sewell Drive,
Yeah.
plus the grade of the wetlands that are there, so it's probably 75 or 100 feet up, those lights are going to be projecting down. So way above the tree lines. The sound study, because the sound there it echoes. When you're on the lake, I can hear people talk across the lake that are sitting in their yard.
Yeah.
So
I can too, and I don't live near there.
yeah. So I'm really, really, really interested, especially understanding the gentleman who was talking about the 70 side and the sound mitigation that's going on up there. Did anyone give any thought to the residents on the lakeside, the property, to do any sound mitigation there? Just questions. And I know there's probably answers to these questions. I just want to understand a little bit more before a decision gets made, and then all of a sudden, it's being built.
Sure.
So that's all, just comments. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I think it's a good idea.
Could you give us your
It's a
name?
good
and
idea to
address?
build the warehouses.
Can you give us your name and address, please?
I think it's a good idea to build the warehouses.
I understand. Can you give us your name and address for the
Oh,
record?
Jim Pavoni, 31 Eaton Ave.
Okay, thank you.
My concern is Holden Street's a city dump. Everybody dumps shit on that street, going in one way and out the other, and always clean it up. So it'd probably be a good idea to straighten out that street. My concern is the water that comes off that hill floods my house, neighbors' houses. We argue with Worcester Sand. They didn't want nothing to do with it. Town didn't want nothing to do with it. So we put a drain in it. We drained the pipe, comes down Pond Ave, Eaton Ave, on the Pond Ave, it's flooding people out. There's so much water comes off that hill. So my concern is if they're building that into that hill, we want to make sure that water doesn't come back and flood my house.
Are you talking about the west side of?
If you go down Holden Street, the right side.
But are you east of Route 70 or?
I'm behind Billy's Shithole Pub.
Okay.
Sorry to say
Now I
it, but
know
it
where
is
it
a
is.
dump. And no one does nothing about it. You know how much people dump garbage in that place?
Yes.
I look at it every day I go home. I'm sorry to say it, but it's about time someone do something to that thing.
That's a little off of their thing, but I made a note of it. I'll talk to the manager's office tomorrow.
Oh yeah, they put chains up, still people dump trash. Everybody brings the trash in Holden Street one way and goes out by St. Pierre's and empties out the truck. And now you guys got cameras up in the woods and you're catching some people. Like you drive down the street, you think you're at the city dump.
Yeah, I hear you. I know what you're talking
I mean, we deal with Worcester Sand, their trucks, their noise, and is the rumor true? In 2 years, they're gonna be 2 polar warehouses in the pit?
In the current operation down there?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not gonna speak for them.
No.
I don't think they're planning on closing that in 2 years.
Well, that's the rumor. Rumors around here sometimes come really true. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Well, Christopher, just 1 second. Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet who wants to speak? Okay, Christine.
Christy Dupre, Candlewood Way. I don't know how many more people are going to speak, but I actually meant to ask also if the air conditioning could be like cooler. We're dying back here, so I don't know if the button can be pushed.
I set it on like 64.
55.
I share your pain.
Okay. So to the gentleman who just spoke, I do drive the same road. I actually did call DPW and they did pick up the pile of scrap metal already on Bow. So please know, as a town meeting member, I do pay attention to this, and I do pass it on to DPW, and I do go up that way. So part of it was done, but not all of Holden Street. They may have picked up some, or they just couldn't get to it yet. But the pile of scrap metal was taken away within 24 hours. That was on Bow. But my other question was in regards to someone who just spoke of Sewell Drive?
Yeah.
Sewell Drive. So what, I guess I'm just trying to clarify what type of work actually is going on. Is that actual site work? I'm a little
Right now?
confused. Well, just of whatever you saw. I don't know. I mean, online it says site work's going on, but I don't know what that means.
The site work that's going on is they're processing a lot of the, what will be nice and call it soil. There's a lot of stuff mixed in that was dumped over the years, like concrete and stuff, and they're processing it, and cleaning it.
Right, but
That's the only thing they're doing right now, right?
but surveying, I guess
Oh,
that's
surveying.
that's what I was curious about. Like
Surveying going for the next 6 months.
Our
Okay.
project before you
Yeah.
has no proposed work on Sewell.
Sewell
Right,
Drive.
no, I don't, she was just asking if they were doing any.
I want to make sure there's not some thought, there's a nexus beyond whoever's out there doing whatever they're doing
Yeah.
in this project.
Anyways, there you go.
Okay.
Surveying probably go on for a while. That's
Right.
complicated.
Which I understand, and I understand things do need to be looked at. I understand, obviously, the MassWorks grant, and I'm sure things have to be done with that as well. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else this evening? Sure? Okay.
We still gonna talk about sound?
What?
We can move that to the next meeting. You wanna talk about sound in the next meeting?
No,
We have our
Gotta-
sound engineer.
So there was a.
Oh, you want to hear from the, okay, sure.
Or we can wait till the next meeting. It's late. People wanna go home.
You just want to hear about the sound thing? Or did you want to ask a question?
Now, I have a lot of questions about sound.
All right, well, why don't we let the sound person talk about it, and then we'll take it from there. So,
I
Yes.
apologize for everybody. If you have, feel free to leave if you want.
For the record, it's Mark Wallace from Tech Environmental.
yep.
So there are a number of questions tonight related to the sound study, and I'll try to address those from each of the different public members. The first, the gentleman at 115 Clinton Street. We had done a very extensive sound study. I think that we made that clear, or I made that clear during my presentation back in April. It's a three-dimensional model, as he had mentioned. We actually showed you a visual aid showing what those sound walls would look like on a three-dimensional basis. So when we do our acoustic modeling, it takes into account, as I said before, site grading, building heights, local topography. And so when we do our sound analysis, as we had discussed before, we did an extensive ambient sound monitoring program over a 1-week period. We selected the lowest sound measurement, which was 32. So our standard of compliance with the Mass DEP noise policy is 42. I think what I mentioned at that meeting was that is the quietest 10% of the time of each hour of measurement. We took over 180 hours of measurements, so you're talking about the quietest less than 1% of the time that we're comparing this sound study to. So the other thing I'd like to point out is we're assuming all the equipment is running at maximum sound and maximum power at that lowest sound, ambient sound condition. It's a very conservative approach. Your noise peer reviewer had reviewed that, agreed with that approach, saying it was very conservative. And, you know, that's why we, as part of that analysis, we also looked at sound barrier walls, so that we can make sure that we're demonstrating compliance at different locations. With regards to Flag Street, our sound study includes 5 homes on Flag Street. We actually did sound monitoring late at night. Those sound measurements were included in the sound study. We actually selected the lowest sound level, again, measured at the site, rather than using the short-term measurement we had there, which was a slightly higher number. So again, we were being conservative with that particular location. We also looked at not only the first floor, but the second floor stories of those buildings, if they had a second story. So again, we understand with Flag Street, it's sort of looking down into the site. So we wanted to make sure we had a screening wall at one portion of the site itself, help to reduce sound levels at particular locations on Flag Street. We also included silencers on the rooftop equipment. And to make sure, because again, the view into the site would be taking a look right into that roof line. And with that equipment operating, we wanted to make sure that those sound levels were reduced at a significant level. With regards to Sewell Drive, it's also included in the sound study. Your house is actually included in the sound study. You're 26. Yeah.
Right there.
So it's so it is included in the sound study, and it demonstrates compliance with the Mass DEP noise policy. Again, we're looking at the quietest hour, nighttime hour, which was on a Sunday morning at 2 times. I think it was between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning and 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. Other times of the day and other times of the night, the sound levels are higher than that. So the sound levels from the project are probably going to be even less so than, you know, as far as a change in sound level, which you would hear from the project itself, would be lower than what we're showing, because again, we're looking at the quietest hour, and assuming all the equipment and all the trucks are moving around the site. And again, demonstrating compliance with the Mass DEP noise policy.
Can I just ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
Just the timing wise, because we live there and they drive trucks till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate 2 a.m.
Right.
because they typically are sleeping then, but for the most part, if any of the hours before midnight, they're still working. They're still driving trucks, they're running machinery. I know they're not
Are you
supposed to.
talking about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Like yesterday.
Every day.
One of the,
They're, it's not Worcester.
Early.
if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
During that week we were taking measurements, we coordinated with them to make sure that there was no equipment operating at the site. And our sound engineer, who set up the equipment and was actually doing spot measurements, you know, in the other neighborhood areas, noted that there was no equipment operating on the site.
When you did the test, right?
Yep.
Can I ask a question? What are the huge booms that I hear at like 2 o'clock in the morning?
I don't know what that,
They're coming from that site.
I can't answer that question, I don't know.
Try to find out, but I don't know if that's happening right now, but, all right, we'll check.
Come on over.
It's a sand and gravel operation.
Owned by GFI, right?
Yep, we're gonna get off track really quick.
With regards to air quality, a gentleman asked questions about air quality. My background is an air quality specialist as well. I've got 30 years of experience in that. And the analyses that I've done on other kinds of projects show that the air quality conditions from trucks are getting better. Because for one thing, there are standards that were in place in 2007, which were reducing particulate emissions, which is a very big deal for asthma and heart attack, heart victims. And the, they were showing a 90% reduction in those types of emissions in 2007. So when you look at the ambient air monitoring data from DEP over the last 10 or 15 years, you see a significant trend where the air emissions are getting lower. The standards that I mentioned in my presentation back in April do go into effect or are in effect, that require that those newer trucks will be meeting those much more stringent standards, including electrification of those trucks. The DEP, when they do their emissions modeling, are including those kinds of calculations in their analyses. So when we do work with on traffic studies, we look at the fact that there are going to be improvements in air quality related to those changes in emission standards. So I think the trend is for better air quality. The EPA has just recently lowered the standard for PM 2.5 to make sure that we're meeting those lower standards. And the state's also looking at trying to make sure we're reducing air quality impacts to environmental justice areas. So, all those things come into play when you're looking at projects like this to make sure that, that the project's not going to cause an air quality impact.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for this gentleman? Yes, sir. But you can't do it from back there. You got to come up front so people can hear you.
Crowd the mic. I think what would be like a super helpful visual is if we could bring up the contour map from the sound study, and then we could talk about it, and you could tell me what's going on with the contour map on the sound study. That sound good?
Are those in part of the report?
Yeah, it's in the sound study. It's in all the sound study reports.
Are those in the reports that we have?
Yes.
The contours? Okay.
Here, I'll show you exactly.
So we can get them that. Okay.
Yeah. It's
Probably on the website, right?
Figure 4 on, I think like all of the latest sound studies have them on figure 4.
We're gonna go a couple of questions here, but if you want a course, maybe it would be better, we'll see how it goes. You might be better off talking to him offline.
Okay, while we're getting the figure up, maybe somebody can answer this question. There's going to be a crosswalk right in front of right across Route 70. It was mentioned that it will be blinking. Will it have sound? Will the crosswalk make noise?
I'm gonna make the assumption that because of the ADA laws, it's gonna make a little chirp when it goes off when somebody's crossing.
Well,
Not very loud.
I used to live in Marlboro on Main Street in an apartment where there was one of those right outside my window. They're very loud. And they don't just happen when somebody's crossing if they're set up that way. But the one in Marlboro is set up that literally every single time that light changes, it goes off. And I'm acutely aware of that.
This isn't Marlboro. And they'll-
Sure, fair enough.
and it's
We could
only
figure out
gonna-
the decibel
These are
levels,
only
though.
gonna go off when somebody presses the button, because there's no other activity.
Are you assuming that, or do you know that?
Well, I gotta tell you, I've been walking across places where there's only a crosswalk and no signalized intersection, and they only go off when you touch them. If they keep going off, it's because they're not working right.
Okay, fair enough. So you know. You're 99%
My experience?
confident.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can tell you in the past month, I went across them about 100 times somewhere else. That's the way they work.
Cool. I just want everybody to be able to see. So, and I'll talk loud because I know I'm not in the mic. If you could go to the key here, you could scroll up a little bit so you can see the key. So the key is 40 decibels, 50 decibels, 60 decibels. The way I understand this is it's kind of like a topographical, you look at it the same way a topographical map would with a height, right? Like a contour is like between the yellow and the green is somewhere between 40 and 50.
Correct.
Right? So there's little orange dots, very tiny orange dots, which represent 60 decibels, right? Right, like little tiny circles, which I assume is where the source sound is, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's probably where those trucks are or whatever, right?
but the trucks themselves, it says in the report, are like 100 decibels. So I'm wondering why they're 60 right here.
That's the sound power level is 100 decibels. Those sound levels are lower than that. So
I don't know the difference.
Yeah.
What's the difference between, is there a difference between dBA and dB that I should know
Yeah.
about?
Well,
Okay, what is it?
dB is unweighted, so A-weighted is you're weighting the sound so that more people tend to hear. So it's basically the frequencies that you're talking about. It weights those frequencies more
Okay.
than in the frequency level. So
Cool. The next question I have is, so this is my house right there.
Yeah.
Right? So there's 50 decibels. There's 40 decibels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's my house
Yeah.
further away, which is 41 decibels. How does that make sense?
Because
Shouldn't this be less than 40?
this is because this is at 5 feet. We did yours at your height of your second story. So it could be
Okay.
a little bit higher, right, because you're not above the ground level.
Right.
So
Okay.
when we did the sound study,
Right.
we looked at both ground level and at the second story.
I really think you guys should take this offline because you're getting really technical. And I know you want the information, but I don't.
Yeah, I told him they could leave. I told him I was gonna ask a bunch of questions, yeah.
You,
I told you to
you
wait
gave
till
him
after.
permission? Okay. Why don't we take this off, if you folks.
Well, how would I even do that? How would I get a hold of this person?
Contact the contact the planning department and we'll try to work something out. Okay?
All right.
Just tell them I said that we would try to work something out.
Last question. This one should probably be quick. You had clarified that the warehouses were at a grade below where the entrance is.
Yes.
Right? However, what was brought up in one of the peer reviews in the sound studies is says, why aren't you factoring in any braking? Right? And it was said in the footnote where they responded to that 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 the site was essentially flat and there would not be high acceleration and therefore there would not be much deceleration. So, but you're saying that there is a hill of a rather steep grade, is what you said.
And I read them, I kept reading the plans. The steepest I could find was a 2% grade.
So it's
out of the site, onto the road, was a 2% grade.
So it's a 2% grade, but it drops 15 feet?
It's over a couple hundred feet.
Okay. Man, I don't know how grades work. I'm just asking.
You can look at the plans, come up to the planning department.
Okay. You had said, I think you used the word pretty steep. So that's why I just wanted to
No,
clarify.
I didn't say steep.
Okay,
I said there was like 16 to 19 feet below the road.
Okay. Fair enough. I just want to clarify.
All right.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Do you mind, can I just have one comment too?
Sure.
Yeah. My name is Jason Callio. I'm at Wachusett Circle. And there was one, I think you said you were someone said they were a visual learner. They wanted to put some perspective to things, right? So just for perspective on what dBA levels, what they actually are, right? Because if we're going to be making jumps and make statements, we should probably have an understanding of what what that really means, right? So 40 dBA is equivalent to a quiet office or residential area or light rain. 50 dBA, moderate rainfall or a refrigerator. 60 dBA, normal conversation or a dishwasher. We've been having normal conversation and we had a whole bunch of people complain that they couldn't hear. So I think there's a little perspective that should probably be put into this versus maybe hyping people up.
Okay. Is there anything new? Anything new?
I don't disagree with you.
Okay. I'm gonna start. Okay, we're gonna start thinking about wrapping this up for tonight. Mike, go ahead. Couple more.
What was your name? I'm sorry.
Rachel Missel, 23 Cypress. I just need to point out that the reaction that we just heard from you guys about the operations going on well into the night speaks to the issue of compliance. Just want to throw that out there because we keep talking about there's going to be compliance, and if there are trucks idling, just call the police. But you know what? if the neighbors are aware that Worcester Sand and Stone is operating well into the night, and the town doesn't know, and nothing's being done about it, how can we possibly have any confidence
Well,
that it's
I
gonna be
don't-
different?
Okay, but we don't know for sure that that's going on every night or that it's going on at all from them. So
Fair enough, but you've got a group of people who live in the neighborhood who are
Well-
saying, yes, we hear it.
that's true.
So-
And if you live across the street from something else close by, or you live by a supermarket, and it's getting excessively loud at night, and they're not supposed to have trucks running at night, then, and which is the case at Price Chopper, they're restricted from having the big trailers come in during the night. If they do, the only way they can enforce it is if somebody calls the police.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
But we're talking about enforcement instead of taking responsibility, and this project is already potentially a 24/7 project, right?
That's
Am I wrong about that?
that's true.
Okay.
But let's not assume that everybody is trying to figure out a way of getting around doing something.
We're
'Cause I don't
not
think
assuming
that's fair.
that, but we are thinking ahead, as somebody pointed out earlier, to the possibility that these things will happen. And if it's already set up in such a way that they can be going on 24/7, and if the neighbors are, and I don't live close enough to hear it.
May I just,
Okay, but, yes,
just
sir.
qualify what I said? It's not every night, it's on occasion that they run late into the night.
Okay.
It's not all the time, it's on occasion.
On
that this
occasion.
happens.
We
So-
can't, I don't think,
But should it be happening at all?
I don't think that we should be taking hypotheticals and assuming that that's what's gonna happen.
I'm just saying that it speaks to the issue of compliance.
Yes,
That is
I think you're right. And as in any other business in town, if they're breaking the rules, somebody's got to report them. If you don't report them, then the authorities don't know about it, and they can't do anything to enforce it. So, I mean, there's a little bit of the public's help around here.
Yes.
If I'm hearing something that's really, really loud, like when they're dumping dumpsters at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I can hear it from White City, from where I live, if I don't call and tell somebody, it's gonna keep happening. That doesn't mean it's loud, but you can't, first of all, you can't assume that everybody's gonna try to break the rules. And second, you can't assume that everybody's gonna follow the rules. If somebody breaks them, you gotta report it if you hear it. Anything, if they're doing something, if they're, whatever, they're driving on the wrong side of the street. I don't think we can be dealing in hypotheticals on what might happen. We don't know what's gonna happen. You're assuming that the people that are doing this, assuming this goes through, if this goes through, that the people operating the business are gonna intentionally be breaking the rules. I don't think you can do that. You don't even know who's gonna be in it.
I'm not saying that people are going to be intentionally breaking the rules, but I think that things happen. And
Yes.
we
when
have
it-
to plan for that.
Yes,
And
it's enforcement
there-
when it does happen. That's
is
what-
it? Because what I'm
No,
hearing from these
no,
neighbors.
what I'm saying is, you have to have enforcement when it happens.
So it's on the neighbors to be up at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night and calling the police.
Nope. No, they don't. But if somebody's, it's just like your neighbors, if they're having a loud party at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you ask them to stop and they don't, what do? Usually call the police.
Yeah, but you
Okay,
just said it's
I don't
not
want to
on
be up
them,
at 2
but now
o'clock.
you say
But
it-
I don't want to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning calling the police, but if they wake me up, that's what I have to do. I mean, really,
But you just said it's not on them, but now you're saying it is.
Is this moving the process of site plan approval on?
You're
we're
right.
gonna.
I will step down. I just wanted to make a point.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, that's it? All right, we're gonna finish up now. A motion to close, sorry, didn't mean close, to continue the hearing to July 11th.
Mr. Chairman, I want to be heard. Okay. You've now had better than 13 hours of testimony on this matter. You've had more than 2 hours of public testimony today.
Yep.
None of it, not one question or comment related to the aquifer, which is a special permit. This is all site plan approval. Site plan approval is entitled to approval under your bylaw and under state law. We can't keep chasing questions that, with all due respect, fall outside your jurisdiction. We can't keep chasing questions because it's not gonna stop. What I heard at the beginning, if I could finish, is I specifically asked the board at the last meeting if there are any questions from the board or staff, and I asked it again today. That's our charge. Our charge is to convince you to apply the bylaw as it's written. This is not a Roman Colosseum where it's thumbs up and thumbs down.
Mr. Dunio, I'm gonna tell you this, okay? I hear what you're saying, and I know the limits of what our authority is, okay? When I get on this board, I'd say I'm gonna let the public, when I'm having a hearing, that the public's going to be able to voice their concerns, okay? And that's what I'm doing. And you can take it or not, but I'm sorry, you're not gonna tell me how to run a meeting.
Let me,
No, wait a minute, no, you wait a minute. A couple of times in the hearing process, not tonight necessarily, you tried to direct us on what our responsibilities are. And you know what? I know what my responsibilities are, and I don't need you to tell me that. Okay? I'm sorry, I don't agree with everything the people in the audience are saying. I think they have a lot of good points, and they have a lot of points that I think are off base. They have the right to say it. That's what these hearings are about. And until we're satisfied that we heard everything that we think we need to make a decision, then we're not gonna close the hearing. That's just it. I know when we make our decision what we have to do, okay? You know, you get huffy at me, you're getting huffy at the wrong guy because you're gonna get it back.
Can I
Be careful, be careful.
If there are questions that the board has, we need to know what those questions are to answer them.
And you know what? I have heard from people in the audience over the hearings, because even though I was here virtually, I sat there and listened to all of them, and there were some things that came up that I hadn't thought about. And I've been doing this stuff for like 30 years between the board and here and with my work, okay? So, if we think there's a benefit to hearing something from somebody, and we think we haven't heard enough, then we're gonna keep going. When we have to make our decision, we're gonna follow the law. But, you know, you can be impatient about how long this is going, and believe me, I don't like being here till 10:30 either. But I wanna make sure that the people think that they've had an opportunity to speak. And that's what we're gonna do. So we're continuing this to July 11th if the board makes a motion in a second, and that's it. And that's the end of the discussion.
Mr. Chair, can I, just from a planning perspective for our team, how can we prepare for the next meeting? Is there topics that you would like us to discuss?
Chris and I will sit and talk, like we've done in the past, and say, you know, we heard this, please be able to address it. Just like we did on some of the other hearings. We'll make it through this fine.
Mr.
Nobody's
Chair-
gonna be completely happy, but we're gonna make it through this fine.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
make a motion to continue this meeting to July 11th.
7 PM.
11 p.m.
7 PM.
7 p.m. I mean, to July 11th, 7 p.m.
Second? Okay, roll call vote. You can vote on this, we gotta do this two things. Site plan, was after the site plan?
Yeah, also the site plan.
No, you got a special permit, right?
Right.
Okay, the site plan.
Yes.
We have a second? Okay. Mr. Liag?
Yes.
Ms. Holford? Mr. Rayo?
Yes.
And Mr. DiPaolo, yes. Now, the special permit, would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion
To,
to continue to
the next meeting at 7.
July 11th at
July
7?
11th at 7 PM.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay, we have motion and second. Mr. Kaplan.
Aye.
Mr. Iliadi.
Yes.
Ms. Holstrom. Mr. Real.
Yes.
Okay. We are continuing this hearing. I honestly do not know what we're gonna do next time yet. We gotta figure out what we need to know. So, if you have any comments between now and July, send them to the planning department, okay? And they will look into it, and they will respond, okay? You don't need to wait till a hearing. All right? So anyways, thank you all. I know this has been frustrating, but we'll get there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, what's the next order of business?
So the next item is the new business A, endorsed Worcester District Registry of Deeds Planning Board member appointment
What?
confirmation sheet.
Oh, that's the confirmation sheet, right?
Correct, yep, so,
But we haven't all, even though we know we're getting appointed, I have not gotten my letter yet. So I'm not appointed. So you can't do this right now. If you read that, they want to know that either you won the election or you didn't.
I wish I did. I watched on public access.
Because that's.
I believe we can hold that to the next meeting if needed. I'm just
All right,
checking if there's
we're
any.
going to continue that to the next meeting.
Yes,
7B is discuss and appoint the Community Preservation Committee representative. Anybody want to do that? Somebody new? No? Who's not here that we can assign it to? You already did it, right? Verna?
No, he's on the
If you-
CMRPC.
If somebody wants to do it, you're welcome to it.
How often does it meet?
Once a month.
How long the meetings go?
They're very fun.
You're so
Sign me up.
You
convincing.
gonna do it? Oh, you love it.
Sign me up.
Okay. He's on in. We need to vote?
Yes, to appoint.
Okay, so we have a motion to nominate Steve Orlikis as our representative to the CPC.
I make that motion.
Second.
Second? You can't vote on this one.
Okay.
Mr. Iliadi.
Yes.
Mr. Orlikis?
Yes.
Ms.
I signed
Holstrom?
up.
Yep.
Mr. Rail?
Yes.
And Mr. DiPaolo, yes.
Where do they? Do I
Lucky
have to
you.
get sworn in by Sharon?
Yeah. Okay. Next thing, oh,
I get sworn.
the CPC, we got a new home, annually asks for input from us on what we think community needs might be that would tie into what the mission is of the Community Preservation Act and the committee. We're not going to do that tonight. Why don't we think about it?
So if I may suggest, so given the hour, I think, they're not going to act on this until their next meeting in July. We won't have another planning board meeting for that in the meantime, but what was provided in the meeting materials is that worksheet that we have that looks at the housing needs, housing opportunities, historic needs, historic opportunities. So I would just look at that worksheet as well as the CPC materials, just refamiliarize with those. And if you have comments, please just provide them to the planning department email, and we'll incorporate that in the plan update as the planning board comments. So.
Okay, sounds good. Is there any old business?
No, none for this evening.
Okay, and number 9 is a correspondence with the attorney for Boylston. And I suggest that maybe you and I sit down, figure out what the response is, if there's any legal stuff, we'll have to talk to them forever. And we'll put a letter together and send it back. Is that okay with everybody?
That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody needs to make sure they sign the bills. And having said that, do we have any other business? All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
I move it.
Perna, can we adjourn?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.